The Crimson Destruction Dragon God's blood rains down on the divine region as Kai Waiao's dark galaxy tears through its scales. Even the heavens themselves tremble when a sovereign's dragon is beaten to its knees. Subscribe and witness what falls when a god realm shatters. Divine region had grown heavy and restless. The excessively dreadful news had hit them so suddenly that all the god realms were currently fearing for their lives. All the upper star realms were trembling in fear, so there was nothing that was needed to be said about the middle and lower star realms. The destruction of the Southern Sea God realm and the submission of the other three king realms had badly shaken them. Furthermore, they had seen the Southern Sea profound practitioners, once the most exalted and worshipped individuals in their divine region, become hunted fugitives who had to keep fleeing for their lives. The fates of the rebels in the eastern divine region unwittingly floated into their minds as they slowly contemplated their own. All of the god realms in the southern divine region had fallen completely silent out of stark fear at this moment. There were still various hot-blooded warriors, devil-hating clans, and profound practitioners who did not fear death who were trying to link up and form a grand coalition to resist these devils. But very few people dared to heed these calls. They could barely even form any ripples in the current southern divine region. However, the situation did not get any better for the god realms of the southern divine region. It grew more and more chaotic as time passed. The three king realms had not been merely paying lip service to Xianxia when they announced the hunt for the fugitives of the Southern Sea God realm. They moved with frightening speed and force, and it was one of the few times the common profound practitioners of the Southern Divine region saw their king realms mobilize in such large numbers. Their hunt for the surviving Southern Sea profound practitioners was extremely cruel and relentless, and blood soon dyed every corner of the Southern Divine region. The hunt conducted by the 10 Directions Deep Sea Realm was the most vicious and cruel of the three, and the tactics they used grew more atrocious with each passing moment. The ones who protected these fugitives were killed. The ones who traveled together with them were killed. The ones who knew where they were hidden but kept silent were killed. Even people who seemed suspicious began to get killed. Many Southern Sea profound practitioners who didn't even have a drop of the Southern Sea's royal blood were killed by mistake, and the amount of innocent lives that were lost by mere connection had grown beyond count. While this was happening, Xianxia's cause had also started spreading in the Southern Divine region. Xianxia was the God-child Messiah who saved the entire universe. Without him, the God realm would have already become a living hell where the devil gods ran rampant. But what did he get for saving the world? He immediately got backstabbed by the realm kings and god emperors who were with him. Furthermore, all of these things have already been broadcast to the entire god realm. The projections we saw showed the stark and uncomfortable truth to all of us. I mean, even a 3-year-old child can tell who was right and who was wrong. How can Xianxia have been born as a devil? Would a naturally born devil be chosen by the heretic god's legacy? Could a natural-born devil truly have gone undetected while being in the presence of that many god emperors over the years? Would a natural-born devil be the first person to step out and confront the devil emperor for the sake of saving the world? It was obviously a transformation wrought by the actions of those realm kings and god emperors. If it was any one of you, would you not also become a devil due to the hatred you experienced after that? I mean, he was cruelly and brutally betrayed and hunted down from the very first moment he was vulnerable. They even destroyed his entire family and planet just to conceal the truth. Think about it. Would any of us have been any different? Those realm kings and god emperors were all trembling like rats as they knelt before the heaven-smiting devil emperor, which makes the actions they took later, both ungrateful and immoral, even more disgusting. What realm kings? What god emperors? Tui. Even though the devil race is cruel and terrifying, Xianxia, man, how can he not take revenge over what had been done to him? If he didn't, would he still be a man? Still even be a human being? Oh, but so many innocent victims were created because of this. Is the true culprit of all these calamities really Xianxia? There's no way that there are still people who think this way, right? Right, Tisk, the glorious halo that enshrouded the #1 god realm in the southern divine region, turned out to be a blinding light that hid a boundless amount of sin and infamy. The 10-Direction Deep Sea Realm has already dug up countless pieces of evidence of their crimes from the secret caches that lay hidden under the ruins of the Southern Sea God realm. These crimes were simply shocking to the ears. They were the sort of wicked deeds which neither the heavens nor the earth could tolerate, and they numbered beyond counting. These crimes were also 100,000 times worse than anything the devil race has ever committed. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that the exalted southern sea god realm was actually this filthy and mired in sin? Just thinking about it causes my blood to run cold. I can't believe the convictions I held for most of my life turned out to be a colossal joke. What a wretched and sorry state of affairs this is. Now that the ugliness of the southern sea god realm has finally been exposed, I actually feel like telling the devils that they did the world a favor. Woo, 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 woo. My wife and daughter were both seized by the southern sea god realm, and they even destroyed most of my clan. The heavens do see. They have finally gotten what they richly deserve. Woo, woo. I heard that the 10 Directions Deep Sea Realm, the Xianxia Realm, and the Purple Micro Realm were all on the side of the devils during the destruction of the Southern Sea God Realm. That is how they managed to destroy Southern Sea God Realm in the span of a single day. The 10 Directions Deep Sea Realm, Xianxia Realm, and Purple Micro Realm fell in with the devils without even a fight, and it seems as if they did not fear them either. The Southern Sea God Realm had suppressed them for so many years, so they must have desired to see the collapse of the Southern Sea God Realm as well. They aided the devils to repay Xianxia for saving the world, and to apologize to him for being forced into the act of betraying him. At the same time, they also saved the Southern Divine region from needless war, which in turn saved the lives of the countless people in our region who would have died because of this conflict. News has come out of the 10 Directions Deep Sea Realm. The 2 sea gods who were killed were actually assassinated by the Dragon God realm. The draconic aura left behind at the scene of both crimes was the aura that belonged to the dragon gods, an aura that cannot be manufactured or faked in any way. This was also one of the reasons that swayed the 10 Directions Deep Sea Realm to throw their lot in with the devils. Are the devils really that scary? Why are our 3 king realms so willing to aid them? News, rumors, gossip, and guesses spread through the southern divine region like a plague, and even started to spread beyond the confines of the divine region. Before the profound practitioners of the southern divine region could even process and understand the first wave of news, they were already being battered by the next wave. This unrelenting flood of information made it hard for them to think objectively. As such, their thoughts were silently being changed by this explosion of information. Furthermore, many facts that were known to the rest of the world were also mixed in with these rumors. For example, the truth that was broadcast from the eternal heaven God realm was repeated and expanded upon many times. However, there was also some news that seemed to toe the line between truth and falsehood, and there were even some pieces of news which were just patently ridiculous. The catch was that the objective wasn't even to get them to believe all of these rumors. The real objective of these rumors was to appease these righteous folk and give them a reason to placate their sense of right and wrong. As long as they could convince themselves that they were still on the path of righteousness, that would be enough. As such, the sins that the Southern Sea God realm was hiding were slowly dug out and exposed. These sins were slowly being magnified every step of the way, to the point where their destruction was demanded by the public, and their continued existence would have been a stain in the eyes of the heavens. The words vengeance, victim, Messiah, and the universe owes him a debt were broadcast over and over again. This image slowly and silently grew stronger and stronger as it quietly suppressed the fact that he was the one who had plunged the God realm into a hell of war and disaster. Furthermore, the 10 Directions Deep Sea Realm, Xianxia Realm, and Purple Micro Realm were no longer viewed with contempt and mockery. They slowly started to be viewed as the enlightened ones who cared about the lives of those living in the southern divine region. To any outside observers, this change was simply ludicrous and absurd, but it was truly happening in the southern divine region. The ultimate effect of this change was that it had silently killed off any thoughts of resistance within the southern divine region, something which had already been very tenuous in the first place. Southern divine region, 10 Directions Deep Sea Realm. The ones who inherited the divine power of the 10 Directions Deep Sea Realm were known as sea gods. Even though the energy they released when using their powers was the color of the blue ocean, the characteristic of their profound power was not water. Instead, it was a unique power called the Deep Sea Divine Power. When they used it, the power raged about like a stormy sea, shaking the area around them as it flipped everything upside down. It was a power that truly fit its name. At this time, the 10 Directions Deep Sea Realm was preparing for a special occasion. But if one were to be brutally honest, it was also the most humiliating day of their lives. The barriers of their core deep-sea divine region had all been taken down today. They were, for all effects and purposes, throwing their doors wide open for their incoming guest of honor. Meanwhile, all of the sea gods had lined up in 2 rows, and they immediately imitated Xianxia when he prostrated himself on the ground to welcome a figure shrouded in a thick fog of malice. Half of the sea gods, along with the majority of the deep-sea divine guards behind them, gritted their teeth silently as their bodies trembled in outrage and shame. They were the cornerstones of the 10 Directions deep-sea realm, yet they were currently paying such gross obeisance to the devil who had thrown the entire southern divine region into chaos. To add insult to injury, they were doing it in the heart of their own home. What a huge disgrace! What an absurd joke! However, not a single hint of shame had appeared on the face of their emperor. In order to welcome Xianxia, he had personally planned and organized this grand gesture. In fact, he had simply sunk to his knees the moment Xianxia arrived, and they even saw a look of fervor appear on his face for an instant. 10 Directions deep-sea realm King Xianxia respectfully welcomes the Devil Master. May your boundless black light spread through every corner of my realm. God Emperor Xianxia's voice boomed across the sky, each word a thunderclap that shook the heavens. However, it didn't contain a single trace of anger or discontent. He was shouting as if he was afraid that his voice wouldn't reach every nook and cranny of this divine region. As he raised his head, he saw Xianxia approaching, and a fanatical light started to burn in his eyes. This was the greatest gamble of his life. Northern Divine Region versus Western Divine Region, and he had thrown all of his money on the Northern Divine Region. Xianxia versus the Dragon Monarch, and he had gone all in on Xianxia. As for his chances of winning, even he wasn't able to calculate them because no one truly knew just how strong either region truly was. However, he would still bet on Xianxia 1,000 times over. This was because he had already planned a way out if he lost, and victory, the mere thought of victory sent waves of ecstasy coursing through his very soul. Furthermore, since this was the greatest gamble of his life, he naturally had to put all of his chips on the table. At the very least, he would be the most loyal of the Southern Divine Region's 3 god emperors until the Northern Divine Region showed any signs of clear inferiority to the Western Divine Region. The ground was made up of sky-blue divine jade, and the air seemed to flow around him like water. This was the first time Xianxia had stepped into the 10 Directions deep-sea realm, but he no longer felt the nervousness or wonder he used to feel when he visited a king realm for the first time. A deep and gloomy black light gathered in his eyes. The fervent devotion that Xianxia had displayed had caused him to choose this place, but he believed that he wouldn't be here for very long. The 10 Directions deep-sea realm had submitted willingly, the Xianyuan realm had been scared into submission, and the purple micro-realm had effectively been enslaved. This, coupled with his cause, had effectively neutered the Southern Divine Region as a threat to himself. As such, he could now proceed to take on his biggest enemy with no worries. The Western Divine Region. It was only by breaking the Western Divine Region and its leader, the Dragon God Realm, that he could truly claim supremacy over the entire universe. When that time came, no one in the God Realm could pose a threat to him any longer. The Southern Divine Region, Eastern Divine Region, and Western Divine Region. The fate of all the star realms and the lives of every creature in the universe would lie in his hands. The swift consolidation and movement of the power of the Northern Divine Region was the next thing on his agenda, but he had full confidence in Kai Waiao. He was sure that she would deliver a most satisfactory result. The 10 Directions deep-sea realm was finally able to personally come face to face with the darkness spreading out of the north. The Devil Master, who could dye the blue skies of the God realm black, had arrived with his retinue of devils. The internal struggle going on in their hearts and souls only lasted for a few more moments, as it was devoured by an irresistibly dark and heavy coldness. The 3 Yama ancestors, the Yama Emperor, the 2 Brahma ancestors, and the devilized Keiji. The auras which naturally radiated from their bodies made the sea gods feel as if they were teetering on the edge of the abyss. Their terror slowly deepened as they finally experienced the power that had destroyed the Southern Sea God Realm. Discontent, resentment, and agitation. All of these emotions were swiftly smothered by what seemed like countless devil gods. They did not even dare to show the smallest hint of them. The atmosphere soon turned strange due to the tremulous welcome on display, but Xianxia simply ignored it as he walked straight into the deep-sea divine region. He allowed Xianxia to act as his guide, but the moment he entered the imperial hall, He walked straight toward the seat that belonged only to God Emperor Shishin and plopped himself down on it. Your Magnificence, the hunt for the remnants of the Southern Sea is already underway. Due to your strict command, no one in the southern region dares to hide or protect these felons. Furthermore, the internal chaos in the Xianxia realm and the Purple Micro realm was not as serious as we had expected, and we will only need 7 more days to extract all the resources from the ruins of the Southern Sea God realm. Meanwhile, the rumors that have been circulating in the Southern Divine region are growing more and more effective. As he knelt before Xianxia, Kang Shishin faithfully delivered his report in a respectful manner. His meticulous but reserved reporting style made it hard to believe that he was one of the God Emperors who bowed before no one. This God Emperor, who had often been viewed as an undisciplined and erratic headcase, was actually dreadfully efficient when it came to executing tasks. As Xianxia sat down on his throne and quietly listened, only 2 people stood by his side. One was Xianxia Yinger and the other was Keijai, and they were as silent as he was. I have also sent people into the Western Divine region to pay full attention to the movements of the Dragon God realm. However, the Dragon God realm has remained strangely quiet, and there are no overt signs of any movement taking place there. This honestly puzzles me a little. Logically speaking, even if the Dragon Monarch is abroad, they will still be compelled to respond to such a huge matter. Kang Shishin expressed both his opinion and suspicions unreservedly as a demonstration of his ability and his loyalty to Xianxia. After he finished speaking, he covertly snuck a look at Xianxia to see his reaction. Unfortunately for him, he discovered that Xianxia's expression hadn't changed at all. The wheels in his head turned before he continued speaking. Your Magnificence, the silence of the Dragon God realm is actually rather unsettling. I will immediately mobilize all the spies I have in the Western Divine region to observe the Dragon God realm for any movement. Also, while the 10 Directions Deep Sea realm has been faithfully fulfilling your commands, we have also been preparing our troops and resources. Thus, we will be able to immediately rally to your command with all of our forces the moment conflict erupts with the Dragon God realm. Your troops! Xianxia swept his eyes over Kang Shishin before giving a soft snort. There's no need for them. Whether it's the Southern Divine region or the Eastern Divine region, I only have 2 expectations of you lot. The first is to prostrate yourself obediently before me, and the second is to not stab me in the back. As for your help, I desire none of it, especially if it's from your 10 Directions Deep Sea realm. The Eastern Divine region had been pacified, and the Southern Divine region had been suppressed, so they wouldn't pose any threat to him during the final fight against the Western Divine region. However, to use them in battle, the only king realm that could be relied upon in the Eastern Divine region was the Brahma Monarch realm controlled by Xianxia Yinger. The Star God realm may also be of use, but the upper star realms were mostly useless. As for the Southern Divine region, adding them to his troops would only be detrimental to the cause. Being trampled and defeated did not only produce feelings of submission and fear, it also produced feelings of discontent and resentment. Turning the star realms of the Eastern Divine region and Southern Divine region would take a long time. At the very least, it would be impossible for him to do so before the war with the Western Divine region. Forcefully pushing them into battle would only result in them becoming the greatest vulnerabilities in his forces, a group of wild cards who could backstab him at any time. They could only be used as fodder. In the fight against the Western Divine region, he would have to ultimately rely on his own strength once more. Kang Shishin's expression turned somber as he fell to his knees and exclaimed, Your Magnificence! It is indeed not beneficial for you to use the other realms, but I, Shishin, am devoted to you. The heavens and earth be my witness. If you are still worried, I can even swear a venomous oath right now. A venomous oath. There's no need for that. A cold smile of contempt flitted across Xianxia's face. There's nothing more cheap and worthless in the world as that. The only thing you need to do is to obediently listen to me and do your work well by managing things in the Southern Divine region. I said that I would spare you, so I naturally won't go back on my word. Yes, I understand, Kang Shishin hurriedly replied. Shishin definitely won't let you down. I will keep constant tabs on the Xianxia realm and Purple Micro realm. If we detect any strange movement there, your Magnificence will be the first to know. At this time, Xianxia's right eyebrow suddenly twitched. He waved a hand and an orb that radiated a strange and bewitching light appeared. A thick and heavy sound transmission profound formation immediately spread out from that orb once it appeared. When Kang Shishin probed the sound transmission profound formation with his senses, he immediately deduced that it was an extremely high-level one which could transmit messages across regions. He immediately said, "Shishin will take his leave first. If your magnificence has any instructions for me, please feel free to call upon your servant." After he finished speaking, he swiftly retreated and left his imperial hall. He maintained his posture of respect even as he flew very far away. After Kang Shishin left, Kayana Yinger gently pushed against the air with her hand and swiftly erected a sound isolation barrier. Once she did that, Yun-Chi immediately activated the sound transmission profound formation. The voice of the eighth Witch Yu-Wu rang out from the profound formation, reporting to the Devil Master. The attention of the Dragon God realm has successfully been drawn to the west. Meanwhile, all of our core forces have begun to secretly move toward the south. Our initial movement will not be fast, but we will definitely be able to link up with you within the span of 10 days. Very good, Yun-Chi said appreciatively. Is there any news from the Dragon God realm? Master wants me to tell the Devil Master that the Dragon Monarch will only be returning to his realm after 2 months have passed. As such, the Dragon God realm won't make any grand movements until then. Looks of stunned amazement appeared on the faces of Yun-Chi, Kayana Yinger, and Keijai at the exact same moment. The Dragon God realm's most normal and logical reaction to their killing of the Ash Dragon God should have been furious rage. Even if the Dragon Monarch was absent, their response shouldn't be to wait for an entire 2 months. How does the Witch Queen know that the Dragon Monarch will return in? Yun-Chi already remembered the answer to his question before he finished it. Kai Waiao had definitely gleaned this information from Zhou Zhuzi, whose soul she had secretly hijacked. Given Zhou Zhuzi's level of personal power and his previous status, he would naturally be allowed to be in close contact with the Dragon Gods. Furthermore, even if the Dragon Gods didn't trust anyone else, they definitely wouldn't ever suspect Zhou Zhuzi. After all, no one would dare say that they hated Yun-Chi more than Zhou Zhuzi. What's more, this spy didn't even know that he was a spy. Thus, it was very likely that Kai Waiao had used Zhou Zhuzi to deliver a strange message that convinced the Dragon Gods to stay their hand for 2 months. Yun-Chi immediately switched topics instead of continuing from where he left off. Since we can confirm that the Dragon God realm won't make any big moves, is there a need for us to so carefully conceal our movement to the south? Yu Wu replied, even though the Dragon God realm won't make any big moves, they're not going to let the Ash Dragon God's death go. Master did not want your magnificence to find out about this originally, but she suddenly changed her mind before she left. Master said that the feint toward the north has lured over 2 Dragon Gods. She's going out to meet them in battle. Which 2? Yun-Chi asked with furrowed brows. The words, "did not want your magnificence to find out about this originally," suddenly caused him to feel uneasy. The Pure Dragon God and the Crimson Destruction Dragon God. The air instantly froze as the look on Kayana Yinger's jade face dramatically changed. She immediately exclaimed, "What? Hurry up and stop her." Kayana Yinger exclaimed in a serious voice. She's not the Crimson Destruction Dragon God's match, even if she is Kai Waiao. Kayana Yinger instantly understood Kai Waiao's goal. If the Dragon God realm messed up their revenge strike against the devils, it would result in a huge loss of face and further enrage them. Therefore, if Kai Waiao managed to beat the Crimson Destruction Dragon God, the strongest Dragon God in the Dragon God realm, and the person who was inferior only to the Dragon Monarch himself, in a one-on-one duel, it would deal an incomparably huge blow to the confidence and conviction of the Dragon God realm and the Western Divine region. However, Kai Waiao had never made direct contact with a Dragon God before. There was no way for her to understand the Crimson Destruction Dragon God's true power. Kayana Yinger, on the other hand, knew full well just how terrifying he was. The Crimson Destruction Dragon God had been the top Dragon God in the Dragon God realm for over 200,000 years, but he very rarely showed his face in public. As a result, the rumors and stories regarding him had slowly decreased over the years. In the current minds of the God realm's profound practitioners, the Crimson Destruction Dragon God's power and status was considered lower than both Kayana Fanshan and Nan Wansheng, the 2 top God emperors after the Dragon Monarch. However, Kayana Fanshan had told her something from a very early age. Even though he and Nan Wansheng had always been fighting over who was the strongest God emperor after the Dragon Monarch, There were actually two existences in this world he could never defeat in a fight. The first was the dragon monarch. The second was neither an emperor or a king, but he also originated from the dragon god realm. The Crimson Destruction Dragon God. Furthermore, the Crimson Destruction Dragon God hadn't shown his power for far too many years, so his present strength was something that even Xianxia Fanshan had not dared to estimate. In Xianxia Fanshan's power rankings, Xianxia was terrifying, but the Crimson Destruction Dragon God was someone who he could never beat in a fight. Xianxia was now going to meet the strongest dragon god in battle, even though she did not know the limit of his power. Furthermore, this dragon god had been slowly growing his strength in the shadows for over 200,000 years. To Xianxia Yinger, this was an extremely unwise move. Xianxia Yinger's words caused Xianxia's brow to sink even further. Where is she right now? Has she already made her move? The dramatic change in Xianxia Yinger and Xianxia's tone also caused Yu Wu's voice to grow anxious. Master, if you calculate the time that has already passed, Master has probably reached the border of the northern divine region, and those two dragon gods are also about to arrive. Xianxia sprang to his feet and shouted in a voice so deep and heavy that it sounded like the gong of a demonic bell. Immediately send a sound transmission to her and tell her to retreat. This is an order. It is not to be defied. Xianxia Yinger's first reaction to the news had been far too intense. This made him feel like Xianxia was in grave danger at the moment. A girl's anxious breathing could be heard through the sound transmission profound formation. Yu Wu's voice had started to tremble with anxiety when she replied, Master, cut herself off from any sound transmissions after she left. She may have done this because she did not want to be disturbed. Xianxia. Oh, that's right. Yu Wu's voice suddenly brightened up. The Devil Master need not worry too much. Master isn't alone, she brought Jai Xin and Jai Ling with her. After that, the sound transmission profound formation closed. Upon hearing that Jai Xin and Jai Ling were moving together with their master, some tension bled out of Xianxia's heart, yet the knot between his brows simply refused to go away. You're that worried? Xianxia Yinger asked in a slightly mocking fashion. Even someone like her wouldn't have a chance of victory over the Crimson Destruction Dragon God. Xianxia asked with tightly knit eyebrows. She has no chance of victory. Xianxia Yinger's reply was swift and blunt. She had gained sufficient understanding of Xianxia over the last couple of years. The most terrifying part about her lay in her unfathomable soul power. She wasn't even Xianxia's equal when it came to cultivation in the profound way. To make the point even more clear, even after Xianxia had been tempered and refined by the eternal calamity of darkness, he still barely managed to keep up with Xianxia Fanshan. If that was the case, how could Xianxia have any hopes of beating the Crimson Destruction Dragon God? However, Xianxia Yinger, whose reaction had been the most violent initially, had grown far calmer than Xianxia at this moment. Her tone changed as she continued. If it was someone else, I would think that they had overestimated themselves and made a rash decision. But this is Xianxia we are talking about. The words rash and brainless don't exist in her dictionary. Even though she doesn't really know much about the Crimson Destruction Dragon God, how much can the Crimson Destruction Dragon God know about her? Moreover, the one who will be more likely to let their guard down in this fight will be the Crimson Destruction Dragon God. That is because he has never truly taken anyone except the Dragon Monarch seriously. Now that I've stopped to think about it, I actually think it is the Crimson Destruction Dragon God I should worry about. Xianxia fell into a long period of silence, but the knot in his brow had finally loosened. Once she sensed Xianxia's emotions changing, Xianxia Yinger blew out a soft sigh of relief. If Xianxia could see him right now, she would be very satisfied. How about the pure dragon god? Xianxia asked. She is rumored to be a pure-hearted dragon god with little to no worldly desires, Xianxia Yinger replied. She also very rarely appears in public, and even I have never seen her before. She is the one with the least presence amongst the 9 dragon gods. However, she is still one of the 9 dragon gods, so her strength isn't to be underestimated. What's more, she is also ranked higher than the Ash Dragon God. If she is pure-hearted and devoid of desires, it also means that it will be hard to find any weaknesses to exploit, Xianxia said in a low voice. After Jai Xin and Jai Ling received your personal instruction, their strength has grown by leaps and bounds, Xianxia Yinger said with a dry chuckle. Their hearts and minds are one, and their darkness profound energy mixes together flawlessly. So if the two of them fight together, they might very well give both us. and that pure dragon god the surprise of her life. She stretched out her arm to tap a finger against Xianxia's chest, her fingernail gently scratching against the cloth of his robes. Ultimately, I think that we do not need to worry. She is Kai Waya. Worrying about her would be useless. I would go so far as to say that it is unnecessary. BOOM. A wave of heavy and malicious energy fiercely blasted Kayana Yinger's hand aside. Keijai was already standing at Kayana Yinger's side, and despite the calm expression on her fair and lovely face, a startling ferocity could be seen radiating from within. "You're not allowed to touch him." "Ah-ya," Kayana Yinger crooned seductively as she caressed her wounded finger. There wasn't a hint of rage on her jade face. She shot Keijai a soul-stirringly seductive look instead as she said, "You can't even accept actions of this level. I should tell you this then. During the few short years we spent in the northern divine region, he used my body in all sorts of ways. In fact, I can tell you that he's ravaged me more than 6,000 times, and I remember each and every one of those trysts with exquisite detail. I wouldn't even be surprised if you told me that he's made love to me more times than all of his other women put together." "Yun-Chi, Keijai?" "Oh." Kayana Yinger seemed to have come to a sudden realization of sorts as a mocking playfulness entered her seductive golden eyes. "Based on your reaction, little heavenly wolf, as the lawfully wedded wife of the devil master, someone who has bowed to both the heavens and the earth, paid your respects to your ancestors and exchanged betrothal items with Jasmine as your witness. You can't actually still be a virgin, right?" Taunt email protected number %. Keijai's face turned from white to red, from red to purple, and finally from purple to black. The image of a blue wolf appeared behind her as she shouted murderously, "Kayana, you are courting death." "Keijai?" Yun-Chi tried to grab her wrist, but missed completely. After the demonic wolf behind her let out a howl, Keijai bent her fingers like talons and swiped at Kayana Yinger. She wanted nothing more than to tear her into pieces right here and now. "He. Kayana Yinger giggled and waved her sleeves, nullifying the deadly energy and allowing it to float her out of the hall. At the same time, Yun-Chi finally caught up to Keijai and hugged her waist before she could give chase. Shred, there was a black flash and the three Yama ancestors charged into the hall. "What happened, Maz?" "Get lost," Keijai shouted angrily. They scrambled back out of the hall before they even finished their sentence. "Keijai, she's obviously just playing you. You didn't need to stoop to her level." Yun-Chi tried to console her. However, Keijai shook him off forcefully and turned her back on him. Cheeks still red with humiliation and anger, she fed. "Go play with your Kayana, it's not like you need me for anything." "No, she's just playing you. Keijai." He missed again, and Keijai flew out of his reach. She never looked back until she vanished completely from view. "Ha!" Yun-Chi sighed while pressing a palm to his head. Earlier, Kayana Yinger had promised that she would keep her distance from Keijai if she returned with them. Now, though, it was obvious that she had never planned to keep it. A while later, Yun-Chi looked to the north with darkness in his eyes. "You'll be fine even if your opponent is Crimson Destruction Dragon God, right?" Kai Waya. Inside the internal space of the Sky Poison Pearl, Honger and Yuer were dozing like a pair of cute little dolls. He-Ling was nowhere to be seen, however. She had been trying to enter the internal world of the primordial seal of life and death again to no avail. After a couple more attempts and failures later, she left and appeared inside the Eternal Heaven Pearl. The internal world of the Eternal Heaven Pearl was pure white and boundless. He-Ling closed her eyes and concentrated her mind. Wisps of invisible aura started converging soundlessly within her palm. At the end of the profound God convention, the Eternal Heaven Pearl had activated the Eternal Heaven Divine Realm in a final bid to save the world. The price was the complete depletion of its energy. Thankfully, after all these years, the Eternal Heaven Pearl had finally begun regenerating some of its energy, albeit slowly. He-Ling didn't have full control of the Eternal Heaven Pearl, yet because she became its master not too long ago. But she did her best to guide and bring together the small amount of energy the Eternal Heaven Pearl had accumulated this far. It was only a couple of tiny wisps, but she could probably activate Eternal Heaven Divine Realm for a short time if gathered properly. North of the Eastern Divine Region, at the border of the Northern Divine Region, the Crimson Destruction Dragon God had departed immediately after receiving the news of the Northern Divine Region's evacuation, and he didn't slow even once throughout his flight. Surely the devil people wouldn't be able to escape in time, even if they learned of his arrival now. His plan was to slaughter all the devil people who thought they could escape the fury of the dragon gods at the border. He only brought pure with him because they were dragon gods, and there was nobody in this world who was their equal. He would remind the souls of the primal chaos once more why the dragon gods were to be feared and respected. As they approached the northern divine region, a dark aura that discomforted even them began brushing against their skin. The closer they neared, the thicker the aura became. Suddenly, both dragon gods came to a sudden stop. Something didn't feel right about this. Strange, the pure dragon god frowned slightly while gazing into the distance. We should have picked up a devil person's aura by now. Are we so fast that we arrived at their borders before them? Asked the Crimson Destruction Dragon God while spreading his divine senses further. That's not possible, the pure dragon god answered. We are much faster than the devil people, but we are also several times farther away from the northern divine region than they are. It sounded like they were already on the move when the news reached us, and it's unlikely they would waste time given the urgency of the situation. But the reality was that they could sense no one no matter where they checked. There was not a single devil person to be found, be it to the north or the east. The Crimson Destruction Dragon God couldn't be right, could he? Suddenly, the pure dragon god recalled something and frowned. Now that I think about it, didn't Zhou Zuzi worry that the devils might have found a way to make use of his greatest profound space artifact, the Void Cauldron, if they discovered the way to use it, and empowered it with the special energy sources left behind at Eternal Heaven God Realm? There's a chance they could have built a great teleportation formation that connects the Eastern Divine Region and the borders of the Northern Divine Region together, right? Did Zhou Zuzi's premonition come true after all? Impossible. The Crimson Destruction Dragon God replied. We would have sensed it if they did construct such a thing. And even if we somehow missed it, the eye of the formation cannot withstand the Northern Divine Region's devilish energy for long, so it has to be somewhere around the borders. Destroying it here will be as easy as turning over a palm, no matter how many formations they've constructed. It was at this moment they both felt a reaction. After exchanging a glance with each other, the pure dragon god waved her arm and activated a sound transmission formation surrounded by thick draconic aura. A voice came from the other side of the formation. It was the Azure Dragon God. Big brother, pure, we've been played. The two dragon gods already suspected that something was amiss, but their expressions still changed when they heard the confirmation. What did you learn? The Crimson Destruction asked. A stifling anger was slowly but surely seeping out of his body. The devil people's evacuation to the north is a feint. The profound ships we detected carrying thick devilish auras in them really contain a small number of devil people only. They also gathered a couple thousand profound ships and deployed them at the easiest places to detect so as to create the illusion that they're evacuating en masse. These profound ships came to a stop at the northern border of the Eastern Divine Region about 3 hours ago, and after a thorough check we can confirm that there's no one inside them. It's a diversion, the pure dragon god said slowly. Correct, the Azure Dragon God answered. On the surface, it looked like they were withdrawing to the Northern Divine Region to hide from our wrath. In reality, they're moving to the Southern Divine Region. To improve the illusion, they made sure that the diversion to the north was suitably loud, while the movement to the south isn't. They only stopped concealing their tracks and traveled at full speed about 2 hours ago. They're expected to escape from the Eastern Divine Region safely in a couple more hours. Another reason the diversion had succeeded so spectacularly was because the devil people no longer leaked dark energy like a faucet. It made what everyone thought was impossible before possible. How dare they? Uttered the Crimson Destruction Dragon God. His talons clenched into fists and his crimson hair spat fire like a volcano. Space started distorting madly around him. This was the first time in many years that he, the #1 dragon god of the dragon god realm, lost his temper. Who would have thought that his very first operation after years of seclusion would be a complete miss? And that was putting it nicely. The blunt fact was that he had been played like a fiddle. He was the Crimson Destruction Dragon God. Who dared to play him? Who dared to play him? The pure dragon god patted his shoulder consolingly and said, Calm yourself, big brother. The devil people are naturally devious, and truth be told, we should have foreseen something like this. We allowed our desire to avenge Ash to blind our minds. The dragon god race was a righteous and forthright race who found trickery and deception to be beneath them. If someone among their race pulled off such a thing successfully, they would only shame them for it. Their creed was their pride and honor. When the Crimson Destruction Dragon God's hair slowly returned to normal, he He suddenly crushed the pure dragon god's sound transmission formation by force and faced toward a certain direction. Then he asked in a cool, steely voice, "Do the devil people of the Northern Divine region only know how to play petty tricks like these?" The pure dragon god also faced toward the same direction and stared at a wisp of gray mist that looked like a black cloud. "Aya, you found me." A sweet, soft, and lazy voice slithered into their ears like a dream. It made their bodies feel like mush and their souls feel warm. Realizing that something was wrong, they concentrated immediately and cleared their minds in no time. The gray mist dissipated, and 3 women stepped out into the open. The woman at the front was shrouded by a black mist. Her face was hidden, but the amorousness leaking for her aura threatened to engulf any lesser-minded being whole. The 2 girls following behind her had the appearance of 17 or 18-year-old girls. Their faces were beautiful, emotionless, and perfectly identical. Despite being dragon gods, the duo couldn't discern any differences between the twins. Even their auras were perfectly identical. The Devil Queen and her witches. The pure dragon god's pupils focused into icy needles. This was the first time ever she had encountered people like them. The Devil Queen's aura felt like a bottomless swamp of pitch-black lust and danger, while the 2 girls immediately reminded her of the legendary twin witches, also the strongest witch of them all. Kaiwao slowly walked toward the 2 dragon gods, gray smoke chasing her feet with every step. She didn't seem to fear them at all. "I am Kaiwao, consort of Yunqi, the Northern Region Devil Master. I've come to greet the famous Crimson Destruction Dragon God and the Pure Dragon God in person." HMPH. The Crimson Destruction Dragon God bottled his anger and glared at the terrifying woman in front of him. "I'm disappointed. The rumors claim that you're a terrifying devil with abyssal-like wits, but your petty tricks seem hardly worthy of that boast." "Why are you here?" the Pure Dragon God asked suddenly. "If your goal was to divert us while your forces escaped to the Southern Divine region, then you've already succeeded. You didn't need to show yourself before us." Then, a flash of realization passed through her pupils. "Unless..." Kaiwao finally came to a stop when she was about a quarter of a kilometer away from the dragon gods. She smiled like a poisonous flower and said, "Crimson Destruction, I heard that you were the strongest dragon god in the dragon god realm for 200,000 years, am I right? Your name is known even in the Northern Divine region. This invitation was really meant for your dragonlings, but then I heard that the #1 dragon god himself would be attending my little banquet. So I thought this seems like a good opportunity to meet you in person and experience your skills, so to speak. Don't you agree?" Whoosh. A cold chill whooshed toward the dragon gods before coming to a dead halt. The anger brimming in the Crimson Destruction dragon god's eyes subsided, and the corner of his lips turned into a scornful, even playful smile. "You came all the way here to fight me?" The pure dragon god was smiling too, but a disturbing thought suddenly flashed across her mind. Wait a minute. There was a huge gulf between eternal heaven god realm and the border of the Northern Divine region, and yet the Devil Queen claimed that she had been lying in wait for them. This meant that she knew that Crimson Destruction would be the one to show up beforehand. The Crimson Destruction dragon god's decision to come here had been a spontaneous decision. They had departed immediately, and they hadn't stopped once throughout the whole flight. Also, very few people could detect them in mid-level considering their power level. So, how did the Devil Queen know that they were coming? Had their spies slipped this far into the Northern Divine region? Or maybe. "Of course," Kaiwao said with an obvious chuckle. It was almost too bad that her seductive smile was hidden by her shroud. "Ha-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha." The Crimson Destruction dragon god's laughter grew louder and louder. There was a faint hint of anger in his tone. His perception told him that there was no one in the area besides the Devil Queen and her 2 witches. She could have brought all her forces with her and caught them in a trap. But no, she had only brought 2 witches with her. He laughed because he was both amused by the Devil Queen's ignorance and infuriated that the indomitable reputation he had built for himself over 200,000 years was scorned by a mere devil. He truly had gone into seclusion for too long. "Aren't you afraid that this would be the last regretful decision in your life, Devil Queen?" the Crimson Destruction dragon god asked quietly. "Funny you say that. To this day, there is only one person who made me feel that way." Kaiwao extended her arm and summoned a pitch-black vortex between her fingers. The stark contrast between the black energy and her pale skin somehow made her look even more seductive than before. "And you, Crimson Destruction, are not that person." It looks like all your lack of rivals in the Northern Divine region, and recent successes in conquering the Eastern Divine region and the Southern Divine region have gotten into your head. You really seem to think that you've seen the limits of the sky above your heads. Crimson Destruction Dragon God laughed again, but this time he was no longer angry. All things considered, this outcome wasn't the worst thing that could have happened. He waved his left arm, and the pure dragon god backed far, far away from him. No dragon god had ever joined hands with the Crimson Destruction since he became a dragon god. Not even once. After all, no one was worthy of the honor. "You three," the Crimson Destruction dragon god said in the manner of a superior, "come at me together." Kai Waiao's lips parted. "Jai Xin, Jai Ling, move back." The two witches obeyed, leaving behind only the Devil Queen and the Crimson Destruction dragon god at the center. "Foolish woman," Crimson Destruction snorted loudly and released his draconic aura. The cold, desolate space instantly boiled up like hot water, and all visible objects within 500 kilometers of the dragon god were crushed to bits. Ah, such familiar words. Kai Waiao's voice remained sweet and velvety despite the destructive typhoon that was blowing against her black shroud and hair. Tens of thousands of years ago, Kai and I Fanshan said the exact same thing in the exact same fashion when I dueled him and Zhou Zuzi alone. She shook her head in disappointment before continuing. Unfortunately, he looked like a stray dog with its tail cut off when he escaped, and he was called the strongest god emperor below the dragon monarch. You may be his better, but you can't possibly exceed him by too much. Can you? Ha! Crimson Destruction dragon god sneered disdainfully. You can't possibly think that. Kai and I Fanshan was on the same level as me, was what he was going to say until he realized that he had no reason to correct the Devil Queen's misunderstanding at all. In fact, the more she underestimated him, the better. So he said in an arrogant tone, "You overestimate your abilities, Devil Queen. From what I heard, Kai and I Fanshan and Zhou Zuzi defeated you back then. The only reason you were able to turn the tables and wound their souls was because you lured them to an area with strong, devilish energy and caught them by surprise." He suddenly glanced in the direction of the Northern Divine region with a deepened sneer. "I see now. Are you planning to pull off the same trick again, Devil Queen? I suppose that we are close to the Northern Divine region. You think I would use the same trick twice?" "Ha ha ha ha." Kai Waiao let out a mad laugh before opening her palm. This time, there was a black vortex around every one of her fingers. "Not to mention that I hardly need an external source of power to destroy your draconic soul." Crimson Destruction Dragon God and Pure Dragon God's eyes turned steely at the same time. The dragon race's bodies and souls were considered to be the strongest among all living beings in the primal chaos, but the dragon god race was even greater than they were. As the ruling class of the dragon race, their bodies and souls were considered to be the absolute best in the entire primal chaos. It was common sense to the masses, and a source of pride the dragon god race wouldn't allow anyone to slander or challenge. Therefore, it didn't matter if Kai Waiao was speaking from the heart or just one-upping him to keep up her morale. From the moment she insulted their souls, she had offended that which could never be offended. All souls are like ants before the dragon god's soul, and you dare insult it, Devil Queen? The arrogance! Whatever smile the Crimson Destruction dragon god had a moment ago vanished completely. This sin alone is punishable by a fate worse than death. Don't think you'll escape unharmed, Devil Queen. All souls are like ants before the dragon god's soul? Heh! Kai Waiao chuckled disdainfully and curled her lips. You would say that before me, you lowly dragons? Kai Waiao's black hair and clothes started floating of their own accord, and a black soul domain suddenly appeared around her. It looked like a demonic black lotus in one's consciousness. Show me the strength of your so-called soul of the dragon god, then. Let's see if it deserves to talk down to me. The Crimson Destruction dragon god's eyes suddenly turned still. What's wrong? Are you scared? Kai Waiao's voice grew even more disdainful. She's trying to provoke you, big brother, the pure dragon god said. I know, replied the Crimson Destruction with a HMPH. Devil Queen, you know that your profound strength is no match for mine. That is why you're provoking me into challenging you in the art of the soul, aren't you? That's right, Kai Waiao admitted honestly. The taunt was so crude that anyone with a functioning brain would notice it. However, Kai Waiao was sure that he would take the bait anyway. It was because he was the strongest dragon god of the dragon god realm. You spend all this effort just to bait me into engaging you in a soul battle. You must be very confident in your soul strength. Crimson Destruction dragon god smiled. Good. Very good. Roar! A long, seeming distant roar suddenly entered everyone's ears. It sounded as if it came from 1,000 kilometers away or even 1,000,000 kilometers away. When the Crimson Destruction Dragon God expanded his soul domain, a pair of piercing red eyes appeared in everyone's souls. Allow me to crush your filthy soul and your pitiful ignorance together. If a soul battle was what Xianxia wanted, then the Crimson Destruction Dragon God was only happy to oblige. His companion, the pure Dragon God, didn't object to it either. Her normally cool eyes were colored with some disdain. It was rumored that the Devil Queen possessed a powerful devil's soul, and that she scared the wits out of Kai Fanchen and Zhou Zhuzi, using the northern divine region's natural devilish energy tens of thousands of years ago. Therefore, it made sense from her point of view to bait the Crimson Destruction Dragon God into engaging her at her best domain. It was an excellent strategy, even. Unfortunately, the woman had never encountered a Dragon God's soul before. Her soul's strength might be unparalleled in the northern divine region, but the Dragon God realm. No matter how strong her soul energy was, she was not a dragon, and therein lies a world of difference. A human soul could never compare to a Dragon God's soul. The Devil Queen's ignorance fit the saying, to view the sky from the bottom of a well perfectly. Roar, the crimson eyes opened abruptly, and the light that burst out from within immediately transformed his soul sea into an infinite expanse of molten lava. Rising above the molten hell was the true form of the Dragon God, a crimson dragon that stretched for at least 5,000 kilometers. The black lotus that represented Xianxia could only quake violently beneath it. Jai Xin and Jai Ling shuddered and blanked out for about half a breath. Then, without any change in expression whatsoever, they closed their eyes, concentrated their minds, and returned to watching the soul battle between the Devil Queen and the strongest Dragon God with their souls. On the other hand, the physical world was eerily silent. Everyone in this space, Xianxia, the Crimson Destruction Dragon God, Jai Xin and Jai Ling, and the Pure Dragon God, had their eyes closed. No one was talking or moving a muscle. In reality, however, a legendary battle of the souls was taking place. A battle between a dragon and a devilish lotus. The dragon let out a soul-rending roar and swooped down on the black lotus with its sea of molten lava, engulfing it. He met no resistance whatsoever. The dragon and the lava instantly overwhelmed Xianxia's soul domain and dyed everyone's soul sea crimson red. However, instead of melting away into nothing like the dragon gods expected it to, the black lotus bloomed and spread out some sort of unknown domain of darkness amidst the infinite lava. Every one of its petals was glowing like black crystals. Roar! The dragon roared again, and the molten lava exploded with the strength of 1,000,000 live volcanoes. The next moment, a gigantic claw swooped down mercilessly on the black lotus, clearly intending to crush it in one strike. The pressure of its aura sat on everyone's soul sea like a mountain. Suddenly, the black lotus bloomed a second time and expanded toward the horizon with insane speed. Before they knew it, the black lotus had become several hundred kilometers bigger than before. The falling claw suddenly slowed. Even the pure dragon god was unconsciously drawn toward the devilish lotus. Its core and the countless layers of dark, mysterious light especially felt like countless devilish arms that were pulling her consciousness into the depths of a boundless abyss. The pure dragon god abruptly shook herself awake and broke away from the influence of the devilish lotus. However, a dizziness that refused to go away still sat in her consciousness. Is this the legendary soul-stealing power of the Devil Queen? She wasn't even the one fighting its devilish influence directly, and her mind was still affected by it. The Devil Queen's soul truly was an extraordinary thing. Unfortunately for her, her opponent today was Crimson Destruction. As expected, the Crimson Dragon only paused for an instant or two before it regathered itself. A sea of aura pressed down on the Black Lotus once more as the Crimson Destruction Dragon God roared proudly. "You really think that the likes of a devil's soul can defeat me?" As if angered by the brief loss of concentration, the dragon's aura grew even greater before it swooped its claw at the Black Lotus once more. Right now, the shockwaves of his soul domain alone would wipe out the souls of anyone below divine sovereign realm. They wouldn't even have the chance to struggle. The Black Lotus shuddered beneath the dragon's might. Even its pitch-black domain was shaking unsteadily. Rumble, this time, the crimson claw struck the Black Lotus at full force, infinite lava warping and shrinking much of the black domain. However, the Black Lotus survived the attack. Pitch black and crimson pushed back against one another. The battle had stalled for a moment. The Crimson Destruction Dragon God hadn't conserved too much soul strength due to all the provocations he had received today. However, Kai Waiao still managed to defend against his attack head-on. It was surprising. "Big brother!" The pure Dragon God's voice rang in Crimson Destruction Dragon God's mind at this moment. "The Devil Queen is a cunning and tricky woman, and this quickly in case she has something up her sleeve." Almost all dragon gods were prideful, lonely creatures with one exception, and that was the pure dragon god. She was mild-mannered, but she also had the coolest head of her kind. It was why the Crimson Destruction Dragon God had decided to bring her with him. On the outside, the Crimson Destruction Dragon God wholeheartedly looked down on the devil race. But on the inside, he wasn't so foolish as to underestimate a race that had defeated the Eastern Divine Region and the Southern Divine Region. So when the pure dragon god told him to end this quickly, his soul domain suddenly underwent a drastic change. Roar, if the 9 heavens were a physical thing, it would have fallen from the sheer power behind the roar. His crimson eyes started shining brighter than even the sun itself. The dragon's claw was already gigantic, but it grew even bigger and filled out every inch of space forcefully. The soul domain created by the Black Lotus shrank more and more until suddenly, cracks appeared in between them. Worse, the red light was spreading at an incredible speed. "Be destroyed, you lowly, filthy devil soul!" The roar sundered the darkness, and the claw hit the devil lotus and tore it into pieces. The Black Lotus scattered. Kai Waiao's soul quaked violently beneath the imperious draconic aura. Suddenly, the draconic aura grew weaker, and black spots appeared in the world of crimson light. Crimson Destruction had crushed the Black Lotus with ease, but Black Lotus petals suddenly appeared all over the soul world. They grew from 1,000 to 10,000 to 1,000,000. They engulfed the entire world like soaring black butterflies or falling black snow. It heralded the coming of a demonic, dangerous dream. The boiling lava quieted without warning, and the dragon blotting the sky slowly descended amidst the sea of devilish flower petals. Even his draconic aura had disappeared before they knew it. Light is but a temporary illusion. Only darkness is true and eternal. Kai Waiao's devilish voice slithered into everyone's ears, pleading, imploring. Even a lifetime of desires is destined to settle in ashes. Only darkness is truly without an end. This dark flower of mine is the home of countless souls and the symbol of eternal radiance and beauty. Dance with them and forever slumber in eternal darkness. The devilish voice constricted around the soul and refused to let go. The pure dragon god's taut nerves relaxed before she knew it. Her strength seeped out of her body like water, and a growing weight pressed down on her eyelids until she saw no reason to live any longer. She had lived for 100,000 years, and yet she found her life to be full of blanks and meaninglessness. She might be a dragon god and the greatest existence of all things, but that also meant that there existed no greater heights for her or her kind to climb. And this wasn't going to change until she reached the end of her life. Life was meaningless. Death was meaningless. It didn't matter if the devil race threatened the world, it didn't matter if Crimson Destruction lost here, and it didn't matter if she died here. She had had enough of this pale, meaningless life. Maybe darkness could offer her something she had never experienced before. All she needed to do was fall asleep and... The pure dragon god felt a prick in her pupils and abruptly regained her consciousness. The delusion had only lasted for several breaths, but it was still enough to cause her to break out in a cold sweat. During those several breaths, she had lost her desires, denied her whole life, mourned her remaining life, and wanted to fall asleep in darkness, never to awaken. She tensed up and constructed a soul defense that was several times stronger than the one before. Now that she had experienced it herself, she could see why the God Emperor in the rumors, the clear sky God Emperor, fell prey to the spell and fell into an eternal sleep. It truly was a terrifying spell. However, there was no way it was enough to put Crimson Destruction under. Crimson Destruction's eyes reopened. They were closed temporarily, and it took an excruciating amount of time to reopen them. But the infinite butterflies trying to seal his eyes shut were ultimately unable to extinguish the divine glow within. Petty tricks are petty, Devil Queen. No matter how powerful your disturbing soul is, it cannot never compare to a dragon god's. Now be crushed alongside your ignorance and arrogance. His divine aura erupted like 1,000 suns, and the infinite sea of molten lava soared into the sky. He only had one plan, and that was to burn all of the black petals in the sky to dust. The divine soul of a dragon god was neither complicated nor strange. They had only two things going for them, absolute force and indestructibility, but it was always enough. The black petals had been conjured using an incredibly high level of dark soul energy, but they were nothing before the power of Crimson Destruction's soul. When the blazing suns and molten lava made contact with the black butterflies, the latter only managed to endure for a couple of breaths before they started extinguishing one by one. His roar shook the soul sea, and his soul destroyed everything violently. The petals kept winking out like popped bubbles until their blackness no longer dominated the sky. Even the darkness in the Devil Queen's soul sea was receding little by little. Back in the physical world, Kai Waiao's floating hair started looking a little messy. The black butterflies flying around her started flapping slower and slower, and her long eyelashes were trembling uncontrollably. On the other hand, her opponent, the Crimson Destruction Dragon God, didn't even move a muscle. His expression never changed from the beginning until the end. A perfectly expected outcome, the pure dragon god thought to herself. A frog in the well who had never witnessed a dragon god's divine soul in her life dared to claim that her devilish soul was unparalleled in the world. Hilarious. The pure dragon god shifted her eyes to the two witches Kai Waiao had brought with her. Throughout the battle, she had kept a close eye on Jai Xin and Jai Ling just in case they decided to attack the Crimson Destruction Dragon God from behind. Sneak attacks were beneath the dragon race, but the two witches hardly qualified as dragons. The blazing suns and molten lava worked faster and faster. The dance of the devilish petals grew chaotic, and Kai Waiao's soul sea trembled uncontrollably. The more petals that burned, the closer her soul sea approached the point of complete collapse. If her soul sea was destroyed, it would take a very long time to regenerate it. In fact, it might never recover. Her true body started shaking violently. The black butterflies surrounding her were gone before anyone realized it. Even the black mist that permanently shrouded her appearance thinned to the point where her bloodless face occasionally peeked through the gaps. She struggled and fought with all she had, but her efforts were ultimately futile. In the end, a single petal was all that was left between their soul seas. It slowly fell toward the gigantic dragon beneath it. Its dark glow was almost completely gone. Its aura bespoke of grayish despair. I warned you that this would be the most regretful decision you ever made in your life. This is the price of your arrogance and ignorance. The Crimson Destruction Dragon God didn't destroy her final light immediately. From the beginning, his voice had carried a mix of scorn, ridicule, and even a small shred of pity. He found it beneath him to destroy the final light, so he simply allowed it to fall on his soul body. It would automatically disintegrate when it touched his body anyway. This act, or rather lack thereof, would be his final mercy to the Devil Queen. The petal's fall was agonizingly slow and weak. It took a very long time for it to land on the dragon god's soul body. When it finally did, Kai Waiao broke her silence and said, "Is that so?" And the petal abruptly transformed into a twisted shadow. Violence, pain, hatred, insanity, bleakness. It was impossible to describe all the emotions behind the scream. The only thing he knew for certain was that his soul felt like it had been dropped in an icy hell of fear all of a sudden. Fear, an emotion so unfamiliar that he had nearly forgotten it was a thing. The devilish shadow pounced toward the dragon like a beast. It was only a meter or two long, and it seemed impossibly tiny before its adversary. That didn't stop it from plunging its sinister claws into the dragon's head. Shred, it defied all common sense. Not only did the shadow manage to pierce the dragon's head, it had caused a black mark that spread all the way from the top of its body to the bottom. The pain of a torn soul hurt far worse than a body could. And so the Crimson Destruction Dragon God let out the most blood-curdling scream he ever had in his life. But even the pain of his soul being torn apart was nothing compared to his shock. A shock that had nearly torn his faith and his strength in half. His soul, the divine soul of the strongest dragon god in the world, was sundered in one hit. What? On the other side, the pure dragon god nearly lost her own mind to shock. Pain and shock filled the Crimson Destruction Dragon God, but his retaliation was swift and deadly. He gathered all of his soul energy and sent it toward the tiny shadow. An enraged dragon god was absolutely terrifying, be it in the spiritual world or the physical world. The tsunami of soul power shook, twisted, and warped the dark shadow again and again, but it refused to be shaken off no matter how much punishment it suffered. Like a mindless beast of hell, it dug deeper and deeper into the dragon god's divine soul. Shred, rend, tear, and tear some more. Grah, aahhhhh, uahhhh. The pure dragon god could hardly believe that the scream had come from the Crimson Destruction dragon god himself. His soul rocked like a sundering heaven, and his attempts grew more and more violent. In the end, he even tried attacking himself in an attempt to rid himself of the terrible shadow. He couldn't. Like a maggot in his bones, it simply refused to be shaken away. The Crimson Destruction dragon god screamed, and the pure dragon god trembled. At this point, they both had realized that that single wisp of soul that looked like it could be scattered by a breeze was far stronger than a dragon god's soul, so strong that it shouldn't even exist in the current world. The dragon god race's bodies and souls were equal in strength. Right now, they were literally the strongest beings in the entire primal chaos. They absolutely had the right to look down on all other living beings in the world. If they must have a divine soul that was comparable to a soul of a dragon god, then Shui Meiyan's divine stainless soul might be the only one that fit the category. However, the dragon god realm never imagined that a soul that far transcended theirs would exist in the lowly region of the dark, the northern divine region, a wisp that used to belong in the devilish soul of a primordial devil emperor, the Nirvana devil emperor's soul. The stubborn wisp of a soul had roamed the northern divine region endlessly in hopes of searching for a host that was compatible with it, and it had succeeded right before it was about to vanish completely. That was how the infamous Devil Queen and the soul-stealing realm came to be. Simply put, the soul was a tiny wisp, but it still belonged to a tier far higher than the dragon gods. The Crimson Destruction dragon god's soul was as big as the devilish's soul was tiny, and the latter absolutely eroded the former like a steel needle swimming amidst a sea of rotten wood. The dragon god tried everything he could to resist, but the devilish soul kept attacking until his soul body was literally full of holes. Finally, the fear of having his soul literally torn to pieces exceeded his pride. He stopped struggling altogether and withdrew his soul domain as best he could. Not even in his wildest dreams did he imagine that he would be forced to escape with his tail between his legs one day. He would never be able to wash away this humiliation for as long as he lived. He didn't know yet that it would be far harder than he imagined to achieve that. The awe-inspiring, seemingly omnipotent aura and roar from before were long gone. The molten lava of his soul disappeared bit by bit. The entire soul domain looked like it would crumble at any moment. Crack, shred, crack. Black mark compounded upon black mark. So much of the soul had been torn out that it didn't even look like a dragon anymore, and he failed to wipe away black scars that marred his body no matter what he tried. There was an explosion, and finally, the Crimson Destruction dragon god's soul domain and Kai Wao's soul domain were disentangled by force. UAH! Pain distorted the Crimson Destruction dragon god's features as he stumbled back. His now open eyes looked both angry and confused. On the other side, Kai Wao also opened her eyes and charged toward the dragon god. She fired a pillar of black energy straight at his chest. Gah, despite groaning in pain, the Crimson Destruction dragon god responded with a swipe of his own claws and attempted to crush the approaching energy into nothing. Physical body and profound energy-wise, he was inferior only to the dragon monarch. However, right before his claw was about to make contact with the black energy, a black light suddenly flashed across his pupils. Then he felt as if a pitch-black blade had cut his damaged soul in half. His scream shook space, and his energy crumbled on its own. Kai Wao's attack easily knocked aside his claw and hit his solar plexus. The Crimson Destruction dragon god was strong, but not even he could withstand a direct hit to the solar plexus. His chest caved inward, and the impact sent him flying backward. As it turned out, he had broken free of his soul sea and his soul battle with Kai Wao. But he hadn't shaken off the influence of the Nirvana Devil Emperor's soul at all. Big brother, at this point, only a complete fool would continue clinging onto their pride and maintain the integrity of the duel or whatever. The pure dragon god dashed toward Kai Wao in an attempt to strike her down. However, two pitch-black figures reached her first before she could try anything. They were, of course, Jai Xin and Jai Ling. The pure dragon god frowned at the surprising level of speed and power displayed by the duo, but she reacted immediately and fired a wave of draconic energy at them. The witch's weapon was a pair of identical black swords. When they swung them, a pair of flawless black energy beams emerged from their weapons, cut through the draconic blast, converged at a single point and finally stabbed toward the pure dragon god's forehead with deadly power. The pure dragon god was stunned yet again. It wasn't their perfect synchrony that shocked her, it was their impossibly vast devilish energy. Although the news that the devil people who were at divine king realm or above had gained the power to conceal their energy had public knowledge for a while now, the explosiveness of the twin witches' power still shocked her greatly. That wasn't even the worst of it. When the twin witches easily shredded her draconic blast into pieces, her 100,000-year-long experience immediately informed her of a terrifying truth. She could beat one of them with ease, but two of them could beat her just as easily. The pure dragon god whipped her sleeves and sliced the space in front of her in half, forcing the dark blast to stray away from its trajectory. However, the witches suddenly threw their swords into the space, and the weapons split into 4 shorter blades before attacking a vital spot each. Divine weapons of old usually carried great power. On the other hand, devilish weapons of old usually surprised first-time foes. Shred. 4 pitch-black scars ripped across space. They looked like black ribbons that were nailed onto a blank canvas. The pure dragon god disappeared from the intersection point of the black energies and reappeared 5 kilometers away. Then, she looked down on her right hand. There was now a 2-inch-long gash in her plain white sleeve. Fury entered her eyes as she extended her arms and summoned her full aura. However, she didn't get a chance to vent it before the Crimson Destruction Dragon God's blood-curdling scream pierced her eardrums once more. Bang, bang, boom. The Crimson Destruction Dragon God staggered backward again and again under Kai Wao's assault. During a moment of darkness, Kai Wao abruptly teleported closer to him and destroyed his protective energy with a 300-meter-wide vortex before landing a direct blow. The resulting explosion transformed into a literal river of darkness. Puuu blood, dragon blood, escaped the Crimson Destruction Dragon God's throat like crazy. It had been so long since he saw his own blood that he had forgotten its color and even its taste. And of all the places it could possibly be spilled, it just had to be the filthy space of the northern divine region. Dragon God's eyes. His counterattack was as furious as the look in his eyes, as a wondrous crimson draconic energy twisted apart the dark galaxy. Space collapsed in its wake as it viciously struck Kai Wao. The two powers clashed for an extremely short amount of time, as both the dark galaxy and the crimson draconic energy chaotically dispersed after colliding with each other. Both the Crimson Destruction Dragon God and Kai Wao were flung far away, but they also very quickly stopped themselves in midair. Ooh! Ah! The first thing that the Crimson Destruction Dragon God did was to press his hands against his head instead of suppressing his internal injuries. He was stronger than Kai Wao in both profound power and strength of body, so there shouldn't be any possibility of him losing to her in a fight. However, that dark devil soul was like a rot that spread to the bone. It tenaciously clung to his dragon soul, and he couldn't destroy or dispel it no matter how hard he tried. He felt as if millions of knives were piercing his soul during every moment of his fight against Kai Wao, and that pain exceeded any determination he could muster. Even a dragon god was unable to beat it. Of course, nothing had ever been able to inflict such pain and torment on a dragon god's divine soul before this. The devil's soul was tearing away at his soul in an incomparably dreadful manner, so the Crimson Destruction Dragon God simply couldn't focus on the battle in front of him. Every time he tried to gather his draconic energy, more than half of it would disperse due to the sensation of a million knives slicing through his soul. His aura and senses had already become muddled in the end. Even his vision started to grow blurry. Kai Wao's body gracefully floated in midair after she brought her body to a stop. Her face had gone as white as a sheet under the gray mist that cloaked it, but her pallor went away in an instant. Crimson Destruction Dragon God, if you choose to flee with your tail between your legs and find a quiet place to get rid of my devil's soul, you'll be able to save yourself some suffering. However, if you keep getting distracted and continue trying to use your power, you will only end up plunging yourself into a deeper and deeper hell. Compared to the frenzied dragon god, the Devil Queen's voice still remained as ephemeral and alluring as ever. If you're unlucky, my devil's soul will invade your soul origin, and that unrivaled dragon soul will be seeded with the taint of a devil. It's something you'll never be able to get rid of, you know. The Devil Queen's soft and bewitching words lingered in the Crimson Destruction Dragon God's ears like a devilish whisper that fiercely impacted his already ravaged will. Witch, you despicable witch! The Crimson Destruction Dragon God howled in agony. Now that it had come to this, how could he not realize that he had been completely played by Kai Waiao? Challenging him to a soul battle seemed like a crude and lousy provocation at first, but it worked because it relied on the proud conceit of the Dragon God race. This, coupled with their confidence in the strength of their souls and their low tolerance towards taunts, caused the Crimson Destruction Dragon God to easily fall into their laps. As a result, the feigned weakness which was followed by a critical strike had now plunged the strongest dragon god in the universe into the depths of a nightmare. "Despicable," Kai Waiao said with a dry laugh. "No one interfered with the duel between our souls, nor did we use any profound artifact to bolster our strength. This was purely the result of our own capabilities, but you're calling me despicable just because you lost. Is this the so-called bearing and pride that you dragon gods are supposed to possess? I guess that I got to see it on full display today." Her words wore away at both his mind and his soul. How would a strong and hardy dragon soul be so easily rocked by mere words? Usually the Crimson Destruction Dragon God would pay them no mind. But now that his soul was being tormented by the Devil Queen, his control over his emotions was far poorer than it usually was. As such, her simple taunt caused his rage to boil over. "Which, I Long Fei will bury you here today, even if I have to shatter my own dragon soul to do so," asking him to flee. Asking him, the strongest dragon god in the universe, to flee with his tail between his legs. There was no greater humiliation in the universe than this. It was an insult and a disgrace to the entire dragon god race. His draconic eyes burned with startling fury, but a sinister darkness was slowly writhing in the depths of those fiery eyes. As he let out a furious bellow, scarlet draconic energy started to gather around him until it congealed into a deep blood-like color. Space started twisting apart under the pressure exerted by that blood-colored energy. "Die!" Blood-colored energy exploded towards the Devil Queen, and it felt as if the entire world around them had sunk in a little. This was a battle between 5 level 10 divine masters, the highest level of combat in the current era, so one could well imagine how vast the clashing auras were. Even those realms that were on the border of the eastern divine region, which was relatively far from the fight compared to the realms which bordered that stretch of the northern divine region, could faintly feel the space around them quaking. Countless eastern divine region profound practitioners were deeply shaken by the shockwaves, and most of them immediately turned their eyes towards the north. There were even more figures that were flying in that direction at an incredible speed. The Scarlet Blood Dragon Prison, that was the Crimson Destruction Dragon God's divine power. By burning his dragon god blood, he would unleash an extreme draconic power that very few in this universe dared to face head-on. However, Kai Waiao just so happened to be one of those people. Her trademark black cloth danced in the air as 16 darkness domains spun into existence and shot straight toward the Scarlet Blood Dragon Prison. Scarlet light and darkness clashed as the 16 darkness domains were simultaneously bent out of shape by the pressure being exerted. Kai Waiao also swiftly flew backwards, but it was at that time that the gloomy black light, something that was a million times scarier than the most terrifying nightmare, flashed in the Crimson Destruction Dragon God's eyes. RIP, the stronger the power one released, the more defenseless one's soul became. That was the law of things. Thus the soul-searing pain that he endured in this single instant was strong enough to blank out most of his consciousness. This naturally caused the power of his Scarlet Blood Dragon Prison to run rampant as well. Rumble. It sounded as if a million bolts of lightning exploded in the air at the same time as Kai Waiao easily shoved the Scarlet Blood Dragon Prison away from her. The 16 darkness domains merged to form a gigantic devilish-looking lotus that struck the Crimson Destruction Dragon God at his waist. Darkness surged straight into his dragon body, and even the blood that trickled out of the Crimson Destruction Dragon God's mouth looked a little black. However, the body of a dragon god was still the most tyrannically strong existence in the universe. The Crimson Destruction Dragon God's expression turned sinister, but even his body's violent shaking didn't cause him to move a single inch backwards. After that, his pupils widened to their maximum in both fury and madness. ROOM. The deep and agonized dragon roar was followed by an earth-shattering explosion. A terrifying power that far exceeded her imagination exploded toward the distant Kai Waiao. She gave a soft cry before her body fell from the sky like a pitch-black meteor. The sky had gone dark, but it wasn't because the power of darkness had devoured all of the light. Instead, the huge figure of a dragon had appeared in the blue dome of the heavens, and it was big enough to block out the sun. His body spanned thousands of feet. Crimson scales sheathed his body, and his claws were like heavenly hooks. His dragon eyes resembled seas of blood. The crimson destruction dragon god had revealed his true form in his maddened rage, and his divine draconic might was crazily expanding. On the other side, the pure dragon god had already retreated hundreds of kilometers. She had at first divided her power between attack and defense equally when she first started fighting the two witches, but she was slowly being pressured into a purely defensive stance. The coordination of the two witches had reached unfathomable levels. Their auras, actions, movements, and attacks were in perfect sync with one another. The pure dragon god couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't fighting two different people, but a single will that was perfectly controlling two different bodies. When she heard that berserk scream of rage, the pure dragon god's heart sank. The reason the crimson destruction dragon god's revealing of his true body didn't fill her with confidence was because it meant that he had completely lost all of his reason. A dragon god reverting back to their true body meant that they would be at the peak of their powers, but it also greatly increased the burden on their bodies and the amount of energy they spent with each attack. They would only do this if they met a sufficiently powerful opponent. However, if a dragon god revealed their true body because his dragon soul was being eroded, it would cause their dragon soul to fall into an even greater frenzy. So wouldn't that mean? Now that this had happened, the pure dragon god found it even harder to concentrate on the fight at hand. A mere moment of inattentiveness allowed Jai Xin and Jai Ling to shear off a lock of her hair with their devilish blades. The Eastern Divine Region profound practitioners who had flown over to watch the spectacle were all currently frozen in midair, their eyes trembling in supreme shock. A huge crimson dragon had appeared on the horizon. Even though they had gathered a great distance away from the fight, they still felt as if 1,000 mountains were pressing down on them at this very moment. They couldn't breathe, and even their souls had been seized by uncontrollable trembling. No one dared to take even a single step forward. Is that the crimson destruction, dragon god? Voices filled with shock and panic shook the air. There were very few people of this current era who had even seen the crimson destruction dragon god in person, and the number of people who had seen his true body could probably be counted on one hand. However, the unique true appearance of the crimson destruction dragon god was forever etched in the memories of the star realms and sects who had sufficient power to bear witness to this fight today. This is the true body of a dragon god? Kai Wao said as her delicate head tilted up to look at the massive body of the crimson destruction dragon god. Her eyes were completely calm as she continued. How disappointingly ugly. He doesn't even look as nice as the pets that I rear in my dark ponds. Witch, die, die. The furious roar of the crimson destruction dragon god was filled with equal parts pain and violent killing intent. His vision was heavy and blurry, and his senses were a complete mess. He no longer cared where he was and what he had been doing. The only thing he desired right now was to use the most cruel and violent attacks to tear apart the Devil Queen. ROAR? This was the most terrifying roar the pure dragon god had heard from the crimson destruction dragon god in more than 100,000 years. His eyes were crazed, and his draconic aura rampaged all around him. It was clear that he was in a state of frenzy as his power erupted crazily from his body. After that, he immediately exploded toward Kai Wao like a streaking meteor. Die! One claw tore open the heavens. Die! Another claw caused the earth to buckle and collapse. Die! The entire space around him was torn as easily as flimsy cotton. The wrathful power of the strongest dragon god in his true body was indescribably dreadful. Every single blow he struck was equivalent to a world-ending calamity. However, the dark energy around Kai Wao's body had become even thinner at this time. As she faced those dragon claws head-on, her figure seemed to flit in and out of that fractured space like a black butterfly in a storm. She cut a seemingly fragile figure as she wove her way through the destruction, but her body was approaching the crimson destruction dragon god at extreme speed. Even though the crimson destruction dragon god's current power exceeded the power of his human form, his mind and senses were completely scrambled. As such, Kai Wao could dodge his calamitous blows again and again. Her figure blurred one last time before she appeared above his head. After that, her black cloth struck down on it like a falling meteor. Rumble. It was as if the crimson destruction dragon had been struck by profound lightning. He screamed as his entire body writhed in agony, his claws and tail wildly flailing in the air. The gray mist around Kai Waiao shimmered as dozens of clones possessing the same aura as her instantly popped up in the air. Normally, this sort of clone technique would be entirely useless against the Crimson Destruction Dragon God. However, his spiritual perception was completely messed up right now. So afterimages he would normally have dismissed with a derisive snort were now indistinguishable from the real thing. In fact, his basic senses and control over his body had already deteriorated to the extent that his first reaction was to try to tear and swipe at his opponents. However, Kai Waiao simply seemed to phase through the world-shattering energy storms as she appeared directly under his belly like a ghost. The black cloth that danced around her arms glowed with a gloomy black light before it struck out once more. Boom! His dragon body shook violently as devilish energy flooded into it, casting a shocking grayish pallor on his crimson dragon scales. Arg, die! His long serpentine body writhed and rolled as his wildly surging dragon god divine energy attempted to destroy everything around him. To the west, in an area bordering the eastern divine region, unease, shock, excitement, and fear were wildly clashing together. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The body of the distant crimson dragon convulsed and spasmed violently as the space around him rippled like water. However, what terrified the onlookers the most was that even they, bystanders who were observing this fight from thousands of kilometers away, were actually being caught in the backlash of his attacks. They violently shuddered as waves of energy repeatedly smashed into their bodies, causing them to double over in pain. God, what power is this? A lower realm king gasped through chattering teeth. It truly is a power befitting of a dragon god, truly befitting the power of the mighty Crimson Destruction Dragon God. How dreadful. It truly is a power that can shake the heavens and the earth. There has been no record of the Crimson Destruction Dragon God taking any sort of action for over at least 100,000 years. To think that we were fortunate enough to witness it today. That black light belongs to the devil race's darkness profound energy. The Crimson Destruction Dragon God is battling against the devil race. It looks like the news that the Ash Dragon God was killed by the devil master, Xianxia, was true after all. The rage of the dragon god is upon the devil race. The dragon god realm is attacking. The world is about to change. Finally, the devil race is going to, A wave of energy suddenly threw a group of powerful, profound practitioners into the air. Those who were weaker straight up suffered massive internal damage and coughed blood. Go, we need to go now. This level of power can easily kill us even from a great distance. Another shockwave hit them and cut off the speaker. These profound practitioners didn't yet know that the Crimson Destruction Dragon God had entered a state of insanity and rage. After that, the Eastern region profound practitioners withdrew to safety. The news that the Crimson Destruction Dragon God was battling the devil people also spread like wildfire. It was news that gripped everyone's heart like a vice. The Dragon God realm had finally deigned to attack the devil race. The arrival of the strongest dragon god of the Dragon God realm seemed to herald an all-out war between the Western Divine region and the Northern Divine region. This battle would decide the destiny of the entire God realm. There was one thing the masses didn't predict, however. They couldn't possibly predict that the Crimson Destruction Dragon God would do as poorly as he did. Shame, rage, pain, the collapse of his soul, the complete loss of control. Anyone who saw the current Crimson Destruction Dragon God would definitely be convinced that he had gone stark raving mad. Each attack was wilder than the last. His draconic aura grew more and more chaotic as well. She attacked the Crimson Destruction Dragon God again and again while weaving in and out of his assault like a tiny boat, struggling to survive a raging storm on the sea. Unfortunately, the body of a dragon god was just too powerful. Kai Waiao wasn't able to deal too much damage despite everything. Rumble, crimson-colored draconic aura exploded from the Crimson Destruction Dragon God's body and turned its surroundings into a hell of destruction. The black gleam residing in his eyes grew stronger, and he froze like a statue while his draconic aura crumbled like a punctured balloon. The following roar of pain was worse than anything he had experienced so far. His loss of control allowed Kai Waiao's devilish soul to eat away at his own at an exponential rate. It was the moment Kai Waiao had been waiting for too long. She teleported to the core located at the center of his abdomen. The black ribbon she used as a weapon glowed as black as the depths of an ancient devil god's eye. An instant, two, three. Half a breath, The Crimson Destruction Dragon God was still struggling with pain. He had a vague feeling that danger was upon him, but his mind was in shambles, and he wasn't even able to think of the right way to respond, much less act accordingly. Of course, the pure dragon god sensed the danger and tried to go to her brethren's aid, but Jai Xin and Jai Ling's black blade threw her back by force. 1 breath, 1.5 breaths, 2 breaths. At the level of god emperors, a single misstep was enough to result in grievous injuries. If the Crimson Destruction Dragon God was his usual self, he would never allow Kai Wao this much time to gather her strength. Unfortunately, the current state of his soul was anything but normal. Kai Wao was able to complete the process literally beneath his nose. When the Devil Queen looked up again, her pupils had disappeared completely. All that was left was pure darkness. "Lawless dark grave of the Usura," she whispered a little something and raised her hands. All sound ceased in that instant, and it was as if time itself had become frozen. The only thing that still moved during this frozen moment was the black ribbon. It touched the Crimson Destruction Dragon God's stomach, and, bang, penetrated its gigantic body with a soft noise. The black ribbon had cut through the true body of the strongest dragon god like it was made of paper. Finally, sound and time was restored to the world. Whoosh! Blood gushed out of the Crimson Destruction Dragon God's back and stomach like a pair of fountains. Another soul-rending roar later, a rampaging power that felt like the eruption of 10,000 volcanoes surged toward the front. The devilish energy protecting Kai Wao crumbled, and she dropped like a rock. Right above her was a rain of dragon god blood. This wasn't the first time the Crimson Destruction Dragon God had suffered a horrible wound. However, no one had ever managed to pierce his body before. The pain inflicted upon his body didn't amount to even a millionth of the damage his belief and willpower suffered. The pure dragon god was famed for her eternal calm, but her 100,000-year-old heart still sank like a rock when she saw the shower of dragon blood. That tiny moment of distraction was enough for Jai Xin and Jai Ling to exploit. The twin Calamity Witch killing formation was an ancient devil technique etched in the memory of the Nirvana Devil Emperor's soul. Although Kai Wao was the teacher, Jai Xin and Jai Ling were the only 2 people in the entire world who could execute it perfectly. Kai Wao had even altered the name of the technique to fit them. The 2 witches attacked like phantoms, drawing a web of darkness that surrounded the pure dragon god from all sides with their blades. Space itself was cut into many even fragments. ZZZT, the pure dragon god's knowledge and experience were 100 times greater than Jai Xin and Jai Ling's. She immediately determined that this was a terrifying technique she couldn't withstand directly. Unlike the other dragon gods, she felt no shame in being on the back foot in a fight. She immediately protected her entire body with her power, dashed away from the killing zone of the technique, and reappeared about 5 kilometers away. However, she still felt 2 points of bone-chilling iciness on her face. Droplets of blood slid down her face. A pair of wounds had been etched onto her right cheek. As if emulating the Crimson Destruction Dragon God's injury, the pure dragon god became the second dragon god in the world to suffer a wound, and it was the most humiliating injury a woman could suffer, a disfiguring wound. However, the pure dragon god didn't fly into a rage. She didn't even pause to consider her disfigurement, seizing the temporary lull in Jai Xin and Jai Ling's movement to charge toward the Crimson Destruction Dragon God. By now, the Crimson Destruction Dragon God couldn't identify friend from foe anymore. When he sensed an aura approaching him at high speed, he immediately let out an angry roar and attacked it. Bang! Space compressed and swelled as power battled against power. After the pure dragon god caught the Crimson Destruction Dragon God's claws firmly, she growled, "Big brother, it's me." GRR? Ah! The Crimson Destruction Dragon God couldn't stop growling because his pain had become 10 times worse than it was at the beginning. However, he wasn't so far gone that he couldn't recognize the pure dragon god. He withdrew his power while trembling like a leaf. "We need to leave now, big brother." Quickly, the pure dragon god enveloped her energy around the Crimson Destruction Dragon God's claw and herself, and dragged him toward the west. Ah! The Crimson Destruction Dragon God struggled greatly against her actions. He pushed her away violently before roaring painfully, "I, Crimson Destruction, never escape a battlefield. Witch must kill the witch must kill." Ah! A white light shone from the pure dragon god's pupils, and a white, semi-transparent shadow appeared behind her. Then she spoke to him using the voice of her dragon soul. "Wake up, big brother." If we don't expel the devil's soul from your body while we still can, your dragon soul will be damaged forever. Do you want to fall into the abyss of no return?" The voice of her soul traveled all the way to the bottom of the crimson destruction dragon god's soul. Finally, a bit of clarity returned to the dragon god's eyes. "Let's go." The pure dragon god regathered her strength and pulled the crimson destruction dragon god toward the west once more. This time, the older dragon only struggled a little before giving in. This way, he could tell himself that the pure dragon god had dragged him away, that it wasn't his wish to escape from a battlefield. Before he left, he looked back at the space where his blood was spilled. Kai Waiao looked as tiny as a grain of sand from where he was, but her image was imprinted to his soul like a permanent brand of shame. Blood was pouring out of his back even now. Every drop of blood was overflowing with hatred. Kai Waiao hadn't given the order to pursue, so Jai Xin and Jai Ling did nothing even though crimson destruction and pure were escaping right before their eyes. They turned around and returned to their master's side at the same time. The black mist that seemed to permanently surround Kai Waiao's figure had faded. Both Jai Xin and Jai Ling stared worriedly at the Devil Queen's pale complexion. "Master, you—" Kai Waiao gave them a small smile and shook her head, indicating that she was okay. She then called out lightly, "Hua Jin." A couple of breaths later, a person appeared before her out of nowhere. It was none other than the seventh witch, Hua Jin. "How did it go?" Kai Waiao asked. Hua Jin replied respectfully, "I understand now why it is considered the treasure of the glazed light realm. Its performance far exceeded my imagination. No wonder it was able to fool all the god emperors back then." As she raised both her hands up in the air, one could see an orb sparkling with crystalline light nestled in the palm of her hands. It was the illusory glazed imagery jade. It was this item that allowed Shui Meiyan to engrave the truth of that day without being noticed by anyone. It was the item that caused the collapse of faith in all three divine regions after its contents was projected to the world via the eternal heaven projection. In Kai Waiao's opinion, the four illusory glazed imagery jades had been worth as much as billions of soldiers. It was also why she had, with Shui Meiyan's permission, taken one for herself some time ago. Kai Waiao accepted the jade and scanned it briefly with her consciousness. Her smile widened. "Wonderful. Looks like we'll have to make a trip to the eternal heaven god realm first," Kai Waiao said casually. "Sai, I almost don't want to leave for the southern divine region. The eternal heaven projection is so useful." Suddenly, she cut herself short as an unnatural redness colored her face red. Then a jet of blood broke through her hasty control and spilled out of her mouth. "Master!" All three witches turned as white as a sheet. They hurriedly rushed to their master's aid. That was just the beginning. Several more mouthfuls of blood spilled between her lips, and the strong front Kai Waiao had been putting up all this time finally crumbled alongside her devilish aura. She fell limp and allowed Jai Xin to catch her head with her chest. Although she had successfully dealt the Crimson Destruction Dragon God a terrible blow, it wasn't easy to battle the strongest dragon god in the world in his true form. The waves of power he unleashed in his madness were absolutely deadly, and although she hadn't taken a direct hit, the grazes alone were enough to injure her. The Nirvana Devil Emperor's soul was of a far higher level than Crimson Destruction's soul. However, it was just a wisp, an ant compared to the mountain that was Crimson Destruction. Kai Waiao hadn't had as easy of a time ignoring his soul retaliations as it had looked like during the battle. Kai Waiao pressed a bloodless palm to her chest. She didn't try to push herself and continued leaning onto Jai Xin for support. A gentle smile crossing her lips, she said, "Don't worry, that red dragon is far worse off than I am. Even if he manages to expel my devil's soul, he'll be like a frightened kitten in my presence for at least a millennium. This alone is worth the price. Please don't speak, master. We will heal your wounds right away," Hua Jin said urgently. Kai Waiao shook her head lightly. "I am fine. We mustn't delay our travel to eternal heaven god realm. Let us move now. One more thing, you can't let the devil master know about my injuries." As her vision suddenly went blurry, an irresistible wave of fatigue and powerlessness assaulted her. Her world spun for an instant, and then everything went dark. When a bloodied crimson destruction dragon god returned to the dragon god realm with the pure dragon god supporting him, it was as if the realm itself had suddenly turned into an icy hell. The king dragons, the dragon guards, the master dragons, the dragon sovereigns, and even the dragon gods were so shocked they could die. The pure dragon god had no time to explain everything in detail. Her first priority was to assemble all the dragon gods and chase away the devil's soul embedded in Crimson Destruction's soul. However, terrible news hit them like a lightning bolt before they cured Crimson Destruction. The devil race had activated the Eternal Heaven projection once more. Shockingly enough, the main character of the show this time was the head of the Dragon God Realm's 9 dragon gods, the Crimson Destruction Dragon God. The powerful and mysterious Crimson Destruction Dragon God appeared on the screens above them. The Devil Queen of the North beat him back again and again, and his hoarse cries and roars of pain filled the air before he finally revealed his true body. The huge Crimson Dragon let out a soul-shattering roar as it attacked in a maddened frenzy. It looked just like a crazy dragon which had lost its soul. After that, Kai Waiao streaked past its attacks and dealt incredible blows to it, causing the heavens to rain dragon blood, a shocking sight that no one thought they would ever witness. On the other side, the pure dragon god was getting relentlessly bombarded by the attacks of the 2 witches, and it even ended with her face getting slashed by a blade of black energy. In the end, she finally managed to break away from them and flee with the Crimson Destruction Dragon God in tow, a long trail of blood streaming behind her. No matter how elaborate or well-reasoned a piece of news was, the impact it imparted could never ever be compared to that of an actual image. These images swiftly spread from the Eastern Divine region to the rest of the God realm, and they sent a huge tidal wave crashing down on the still reeling Divine regions. The truth being publicly exposed had destroyed everyone's trust. The consecutive defeats of the Eastern Divine region and Southern Divine region had been major blows against their psyche. This image, however, was undoubtedly a fatal blow to the confidence of every single profound practitioner in the God realm. This was doubly true for the ones in the Western Divine region. What sort of beings were the 9 dragon gods? They were the left and right arms of the dragon monarch, the cornerstones of the dragon god realm. Their status in the god realm was so exalted that they stood on equal footing with the god emperors of the other king realms. The ash dragon god's miserable death in the southern sea god realm had sent shockwaves through the entire god realm, and everyone immediately expected the dragon god realm's furious response. But no one had looked down on the ash dragon god or expressed any disappointment in him. This was because the rumors had said that the strongest devils of the northern divine region had accompanied Xianxia to the southern sea god realm. So no matter how strong the ash dragon god was, there was nothing he could do if the core forces of the northern divine region had ganged up on him. However, things were different for the Crimson Destruction dragon god. The images showed that he and the Devil Queen were engaged in a one-on-one duel, and no external forces interfered with their fight. Yet he ended up being abused by the Devil Queen, and the fight ended with her drilling a hole through him. He even had to be forcibly dragged away by the pure dragon god as she fled. Furthermore, the pure dragon god had been completely suppressed by 2 witches who were far less famous than she. She could barely even return a blow, and it even ended with her receiving a humiliating blow to her face. The number 1 dragon god had not only lost to the Devil Queen, he had lost in a manner which was devoid of any dignity or grace, and the lasting impression he left on everyone was the dragon blood that poured crazily from his body. The Eastern Divine region trembled while the Southern Divine region shook, and even those devils who were currently quietly moving to the south sank to their knees in awe and wonder when they saw the images being broadcast above them. It was just like when they had all knelt in awe of the majestic power of the Devil Master. As for the Western Divine region, they had descended into a terrifying silence at this very moment, even though they were the strongest divine region in the God realm. The Dragon God realm-led Western Divine region had been almost indifferent to the invasion of the Northern Divine region. Even when the Eastern Divine region's forces were swept off the board, and when the Southern Divine regions were turned upside down in a single night, they still believed that the Dragon God realm was a heavenly moat that the devils simply couldn't cross. This was because the Dragon God realm was just that powerful. In fact, the 9 dragon gods themselves were practically equivalent to 9 god emperors. Furthermore, the powerful individuals who inherited memories from their ancestors knew that the head of the 9 dragon gods, the Crimson Destruction dragon god, was a terrifying existence that outstripped all other god emperors, a being second only to the dragon monarch himself. It was this ardent belief that allowed them to face the devils of the Northern Divine region without even batting an eye. But now, this faith had been cruelly shattered in the most direct and clear manner, in a way that could not be questioned at all. When the news of this reached the dragon god's sacred hall, the expression on every dragon god's face turned incomparably somber. Even though the Crimson Destruction dragon god was fully focused right now, his dragon soul was still being tormented by Kai Waiao's devilish incursion. It was hard for him to settle both his mind and soul. His vision immediately went black the moment he landed on the ground. Blood spewed from his mouth, and he nearly fainted right there and then. When they finally saw the cycling images, all the other dragon gods felt their blood rush crazily to their heads. Their faces alternated between turning as red as blood and as black as the bottom of a wok as they started to breathe heavily. A dragon god could lose or even die, but how could they allow themselves to make such a disgraceful, pathetic, and ugly showing? As the ones who understood the Crimson Destruction dragon god the best, they could scarcely believe that the frenzied dragon in those images was actually him. He had not only lost his own honor and dignity, his actions had also been the equivalent of having all the dragon gods suffer countless humiliating slaps across the face. At this moment, all the dragon gods knew that Kai Waiao had set this trap so that she could shame the entire dragon god race by association. She first drew their attention towards the north. Once she found out that it was the Crimson Destruction dragon god who had been lured in, she immediately formed the second part of her plan. And now, she had sprung her final trap. This unprecedented feeling of humiliation made all the dragon gods feel as if shit had literally rained down on their heads. They had been well and truly caught in her web, and in the end, it had resulted in a huge thunderclap being set off in the already shaky god realm. Despicable, witch, I will definitely kill you, the Crimson Destruction dragon god growled through broken teeth. His eyes were like a scarlet abyss, and every single one of his words was filled with hate. 200,000 years of pride and glory had been destroyed in a single day. There's no need to brood over it, the Azure Dragon god comforted him in the calmest voice he could manage. He forcibly suppressed the writhing of his heart before he continued. This affair will undoubtedly rock the hearts of the Western Divine region, but it will not affect our Dragon God realm. Big Brother will definitely be able to repay the resentment he feels today 10,000 times over once 2 months have passed. This was how he consoled Long Fei. However, did this truly not affect the Dragon God realm? At the very least, even the somber-looking Azure Dragon God, who was currently trying to comfort the Crimson Destruction Dragon God in a calm voice, was far from as calm as he looked. Even if one discounted the huge and heavy shame he currently felt, his emotions were still a huge mess. The Ash Dragon God had died miserably, and he had only managed to send a single soul transmission before his death. Now the Crimson Destruction Dragon God had suffered a humiliating defeat. Even though he had fallen for the Devil Queen's trap, a loss was still a loss. What's more, strength had never been the sole deciding factor between victory and defeat, glory and shame. The Eastern Divine Region and the Southern Divine Region were currently engulfed by darkness. And now, a long and dark shadow had entered the hearts of the Dragon God realm before they had even started the fight against the devils. The devils that Yun Qi led were far more terrifying than anyone had previously imagined. Furthermore, they kept exceeding even the highest estimates that had been set for them. Today, even if the Dragon Monarch had not given that command in the God realm of absolute beginning, none of the Dragon Gods would dare to make any rash moves any longer. Only the return of the Dragon Monarch could restore everything back to normal right now. Western Divine Region, Qilin Realm. The strongest king realm after the Dragon God realm in the Western Divine Region seemed to be receiving a lot of guests today. Furthermore, these guests came in the most discreet ways, and they all quietly left after the briefest of visits. Sigh. The Qilin Emperor was standing on the roof of a tall tower as he let out a soft sigh. After that, he looked away from the cloudy sky and turned to greet his latest visitor. You've come. Cold energy swirled in the air, and an icy mist slowly parted to reveal a tall and willowy maiden dressed all in blue. Qilin Emperor, I've come to disturb you yet again, the Blue Dragon Emperor replied. I've been waiting for you for quite a while, actually, the Qilin Emperor said with a warm look on his face. He wanted to greet her with his usual smile, but no matter how hard he tried, his lips simply refused to obey. This aura, the Blue Dragon Emperor said as she walked toward him, the myriad manifestations God Emperor came. All of them paid me a visit, the Qilin Emperor replied. The Blue Dragon Emperor lapsed into a short period of silence, but her face remained as calm as ever. Between the heavens and the earth, across the myriad realms, with Long Bai as king and Long Fei as his second, As long as both dragons circle the heavens, there is no chaos in the land that will go unquelled. The Qilin Emperor let out a long sigh before continuing. In my long life, I have never ever doubted those words before. At least before yesterday, that is. The Blue Dragon Emperor replied. So even you were that shaken by yesterday's event. However, according to the news that came from the Dragon God realm, the Crimson Destruction Dragon God fell into the Devil Queen's trap, and that was the reason for his loss. He was definitely in an abnormal state during yesterday's broadcast, so the story is more than plausible. The Qilin Emperor shook his head and said, but a loss is still a loss. Moreover, he not only lost, but he also lost in such an undignified and pathetic manner. Furthermore, the high-ranked members of the dragon race have never made excuses for their losses. Thus, the Dragon God realm spreading this news actually hurts rather than helps them, because it shows that even the dragon gods have grown nervous about the situation. Yes, as a fellow high-ranked member of the dragon race, the Blue Dragon Emperor had no choice but to concede this point. Qilin Emperor, I've come today to seek your counsel. After a short peace, the Blue Dragon Emperor decided to speak plainly. In other words, I hope that I can get your acknowledgement regarding a certain matter. Hess. Before the Blue Dragon Emperor even asked her question, the Qilin Emperor let out a dry chuckle and said, Blue Dragon Emperor, there is no need to feel shame or fear over what you are feeling and thinking right now. On the contrary, this is exactly what you should be feeling. The Blue Dragon Emperor's lips twitched. If you were merely a normal, profound practitioner, then any decision that you made would only concern your hot blood alone. However, you are the Blue Dragon Emperor. As the ruler of a king realm, you are responsible for a gigantic star realm that has continued on for tens of thousands of years. You do not have the right to be impulsive. You don't even have the right to be selfish. Each and every one of your decisions should be made for the sake of the Blue Dragon realm's continued prosperity and survival. I am no different from you in that regard. This reply caused the Blue Dragon Emperor's brow to furrow. She cautiously asked, You're saying that after the Dragon Monarch returns to his realm, we will have no choice but to obey his commands. Even if it isn't because of the Dragon God realm, we still have our duty as the God Emperors of the Western Divine region to fight for our region. The Qilin Emperor paused for a moment, but his voice had deepened by several octaves when he chose to continue. However, the Dragon God realm's defeat is now something we have to think about and prepare for. The mighty Southern Sea Realm was destroyed in the span of a single day. The three remaining king realms of the Southern Divine region chose to submit without a fight. Xianxia Fanshan, a man of boundless ambition, had chosen to stake everything on a single gamble and leave the Brahma Monarch realm to Yun Chi's companion, Xianxia Yinger. The two Brahma ancestors, who had returned to the world in a bizarre turn of events, had also chosen to side with the devils. Even the dragons of absolute beginning, who had always excluded themselves from the affairs of the God realm, had chosen to break their neutrality and help the devils. These were all incredibly shocking choices. Was it because all of these people saw something in Yun Chi? This was even before considering the Ash Dragon God's miserable death and the Crimson Destruction Dragon God's pathetic defeat. Considering all of these factors, even a person who trusted and understood the Dragon God realm the most would start to feel intense doubts in their hearts. Therefore, save some of your strength, make sure that you have a few escape routes, do all of these things at your discretion. The Qiling Emperor closed his eyes. No matter what you choose, remember, there is no right or wrong answer. The Blue Dragon Emperor slowly nodded her head. This trip was not in vain. Your words have greatly eased the burden in my heart. The world is in a state of fear and anxiety, so I won't disturb you any further. Farewell. The Blue Dragon Emperor turned around and withdrew her aura before she prepared to leave. Especially you, the Qilin Emperor suddenly said. Over the last few years, the light in your eyes has grown dull and heavy. Is this heaviness because of Yun Chi? The Blue Dragon Emperor's body froze for a moment before she replied. My Blue Dragon race has water as our thoughts, ice as our hearts. We repay vengeance for vengeance, and gratitude for gratitude. Only Yun Chi, he has become a knot in my heart that I have been unable to untie. The Qilin Emperor suddenly laughed, and that laugh was exceptionally warm and gentle. You have been emperor for so many years, but this is one trait of yours that has not changed since your youth. Very good, very good. The Blue Dragon Emperor gave a small nod of her head in response to those words, and then she silently left. The most likely result of such a loss of confidence in the Dragon God realm was that their other king realms would have to acknowledge the possibility of defeat. And this was exactly what Kai Waiao had hoped to see. Region, the black profound arcs that no longer needed to conceal their presence increased their speed drastically as they shot through the southern divine region. The southern divine region was thrown into a great panic because of that, as everyone feared for their lives. However, these black profound arcs ignored everything else, flying into the 10 directions deep sea realm in an exceptionally neat formation. All the major star realms and hubs in the southern divine region had gone untouched, unlike what had happened in the eastern divine region. A few days passed since those black profound arcs flew into the 10 directions deep sea realm, but the forces of the northern divine region showed no sign of disembarking. Despite that being the case, the panic that had engulfed the entire southern divine region still hadn't dissipated. The core of the northern divine region's strength had shifted from the eastern divine region to the southern divine region, and to the southern divine region's star realms and profound practitioners. It felt no different from having their heads thrust into a tiger's mouth. No one could guess when it would go crazy and bite their head off. This time, the northern divine region had truly shifted all of their forces over. The 3 king realms of the north, the Burning Moon Realm, Soul-Stealing Realm, and Yama Realm had led the way, and the core forces of the upper and middle star realms had traveled alongside them. This large movement made it seem as if they were abandoning the conquered eastern divine region in a desperate bid to avoid the dragon god realm's wrath. Kai Waiao and the 3 witches Jai Ling, Jai Xin, and Hua Jin arrived last. When she entered the 10 directions deep sea realm, everyone bowed to her the moment they saw her. This included both the devils of the north and the profound practitioners of the 10 directions deep sea realm. The former did it out of worshipful adoration, but the latter did it out of abject fear. This was the devil queen of the north, Kai Waiao, the dreadful woman who had beaten the #1 dragon god Black and Blue and sent him scurrying away in defeat. Furthermore, the 2 ephemerally beautiful women behind her with cold and serene expressions on their identical faces were the twin witches who had beaten back the pure dragon god by themselves. There was no one in the god realm who did not have the images of these 3 women engraved in their hearts and souls. 10 directions deep sea realm King Kang Shishan respectfully welcomes the devil queen. After he yelled out that excited and nervous greeting, Kang Shishan stepped forward to officially welcome her with his entire retinue of sea gods. He bowed respectfully before she had even drawn near and shouted, "The heavenly might of the devil queen shakes the world, and it has already resounded in my ear like heavenly thunder since 10 millennia ago. I finally had the honor to see the devil queen's true prowess a few days ago, and even one as strong as the Crimson Destruction Dragon God was nothing but a mere worm in front of your heavenly might. The only one under heaven who can be the Devil Master's queen is the Devil Queen herself, and the only one who deserves to obtain the Devil Queen's majestic body is the Devil Master himself. With the Devil Master and the Devil Queen joining forces, it is truly time for a new era to dawn, a time for new rules to be written." Kai Waiao's alluring eyes hidden beneath black mist swept over Kang Shishan before she languidly replied, "I've heard of the Southern Divine Region's God Emperor Shishan since a long time ago, and you truly do live up to your reputation. Even your words of praise are at the level of a God Emperor." Kang Shishan bowed his head and said, "I dare not receive such lavish praise from the Devil Queen. The fact that the Devil Queen even deigns to grace the 10 directions deep sea realm with her presence is a multitudinous blessing in and of itself. Having the Devil Queen grace me with her presence today is truly worth even 100 calamities." Before he could finish speaking, Kang Shishan suddenly sensed an extremely heavy and oppressive aura rapidly approaching. He didn't even need to think before he turned around and dropped to his knees. "I greet the Devil Master." Yun Qi descended from the sky with Kaianai Yinger by his side, and the 3 Yama ancestors were trailing him in the distance. "Your Magnificence," Kai Waiao greeted him with a small but sweet smile. Her soft and cottony voice rang in the air, sending a shudder through the soul of everyone who heard it. Some even felt their bodies go limp upon hearing that bewitching and alluring voice. "To think that the hasty and impromptu visit you arranged to the south ended up with you trampling over the southern sea god realm and cowing the entire southern divine region into obedience. What a truly delightful surprise you've given me." Yun Qi's eyes lingered on her for a few seconds, and he swallowed the words that he had just been about to say. Instead, he replied in a calm voice, "Didn't you do the exact same thing? You gave me a huge surprise as well." Kai Waiao moved forward, her slim and graceful figure inching toward Xianxia as she said, "The matter with the Crimson Destruction Dragon God was something I thought of on the fly. It was presumptuous of me to do so. If the Devil Master wants to punish me in front of everyone, I will have no complaints about it." Her words sounded as if she was bracing herself for punishment, but her voice was bewitching enough to steal one's soul. Kang Shishin, who was standing by the side, suddenly felt his entire body burning up. It was as if a raging fire had started burning within him. He swiftly concentrated and calmed his heart as he fiercely bit down on the tip of his tongue. The coppery taste of blood filled his mouth, and it was only then that he managed to suppress his wild thoughts and prevent himself from showing any inappropriate expressions. Even though his entire body was still burning with raging desire, the depths of Kang Shishin's eyes were actually filled with shock and chagrin. She truly did live up to her reputation as the Devil Queen who had destroyed the Crimson Destruction Dragon God's 200,000-year reputation in a single battle. Just a few simple words had affected him in such a dreadful manner. However, what truly stunned him in this moment was Xianxia's reaction. Kang Shishin was merely a bystander and he had very nearly embarrassed himself, but Xianxia was the direct target of Kai Waiao's attack. Her lips were practically right next to Xianxia's ear, and every single one of her words were directly whispered into his soul. However, his expression hardly even changed under this assault, and the only obvious reaction Kang Shishin could observe was Xianxia subtly averting his eyes to dodge Kai Waiao's gaze. "You've always succeeded in whatever you get yourself involved in," Xianxia said. "This time was no exception. However, it is better for you not to act in such a rash and presumptuous manner in the future because there is no need for it." Kai Waiao. Kai and Yinger's eyes narrowed when she heard those words. When it came to acting in a rash and presumptuous manner, there was no one who could compare to Xianxia. But he was the Devil Master, so what could anyone do about it? However, the words, "there is no need for that," were rather stinging. Even though the intention behind those words was to tell Kai Waiao to stop taking risks, it did nothing to reduce the unintended hurt that it caused. Xianxia walked forward a few steps to avoid direct contact with Kai Waiao's eyes. "The sights and sounds that can be found in the 10 Directions Deep Sea Realm are singularly beautiful. You should go take a look. In 6 hours' time, I want everyone to go to the main hall. I have something big to announce." After he finished speaking, Xianxia simply left. Something big. A pensive look appeared on Kai Waiao's face, and she remained where she had been standing. "Could it be, did you get hurt?" Kai and Yinger asked. "These petty injuries are nothing to be concerned about," Kai Waiao replied casually. "Even I can tell whether those wounds are minor or not. So do you think that he couldn't?" Kai and Yinger stared straight past the black mist to look into Kai Waiao's eyes. "I know far better than you just how strong the Crimson Destruction Dragon God is. Your unique devil soul is indeed something that is unrivaled in this world, but in the end, it is still too weak. What's more, you already split off a thread and planted it in Zhou Xuzi's body. I don't think you even had a 10% chance of winning in a fight against the Crimson Destruction Dragon God. Taking such risks are not your style. Chance of winning, huh?" Those 3 words elicited a long sigh from Kai Waiao. "Kai and Yinger, Yun Kaining, do you still remember what I was most worried about when we started this campaign?" Kai Waiao suddenly asked. "The Dragon God Realm," Kai and Yinger replied. Back when they had used revenge against the eternal Heaven God Realm as a pretext to invade the Eastern Divine Region. The thing they were worried about the most was that the Dragon God Realm would move outside their expectations and forcibly step in to intervene. This worry was definitely not unwarranted. When the God Emperors betrayed Xianxia, the Dragon Monarch had shown an abnormally strong killing intent towards him. This was especially clear during their confrontation outside the Blue Pole Star. His actions toward both Xianxia and Mu Xuanian were the most cruel and callous he had ever been. They only found out about the reason for this much later. To think that the Dragon Queen, who was as spotless and pure as a heavenly lotus, had also ended up sleeping with Xianxia. As such, even if the Dragon Monarch killed him 1,000,000 times over, he still might not be able to quench his hatred. Yet Xianxia had never ever been worried about the Dragon God Realm. His eyes actually gleamed with anticipation, practically, every time the Dragon God Realm was mentioned. It was as if he couldn't wait to take them on. It even seemed as if he viewed the Dragon God Realm as less of a threat than the King Realms of the Eastern Divine Region and Southern Divine Region. Both Kai Waiao and Kai and Yinger had clearly sensed this strange confidence of his many times over. Why doesn't he fear the dragon god realm? I have been ceaselessly thinking about this question for the past few months, Kai Waiao said in a slow and measured voice. The words, "there is no need for that he just said to Kai Waiao truly expressed his utter lack of concern about the dragon god realm. Do you know the answer? She asked Kai and Yinger. He's going to suppress them with his dragon soul? Kai and Yinger asked in a doubtful voice. Kai Waiao shook her head as a faint smile appeared on her face. Looks like you don't know either, but it definitely won't be as simple as that. Kai and Yinger folded her arms below her chest before she replied in a dry voice. I've said this many times already. He's no longer the Yun Qi he was before. Right now, he holds a little of himself back from everyone, no matter who they are, and that includes the little wife he just picked up. HMPH. Also, when he said there is no need for that, it wasn't a deliberate stab at you, Kai and Yinger said with a dry chuckle. From the moment he received news that you were facing off against the Crimson Destruction Dragon God alone to the time where the images were broadcast across the Eastern Divine region, he was constantly in a state of anxiety and impatience. Oh, really? The black mist that circled Kai Waiao grew sluggish and dense, but the corners of the Devil Queen's lips quirked up slightly. What truly shocked me is that these words actually just came out of your mouth. I've also been constantly changing, Kai and Yinger said as she looked up at the sky. Let's continue talking about the chances of winning that you seem so concerned about. For you to take such a gamble, it means that you don't have much confidence in our upcoming battle against the Western Divine region. Yes, Kai Waiao didn't deny it. From the moment we stepped out of the Northern Divine region, the more I thought about the Dragon God realm and the Western Divine region it commands, the more worried I grew. During this period, I've been able to spy on the core of the Dragon God realm's forces, and I very quickly came to this conclusion. If we remove the factor that is Yun Qi, we have absolutely no chance of winning if we go to war with the Western Divine region with our current forces. Kai and Yinger didn't display any shock whatsoever at Kai Waiao's conclusion. Let's take my recent duel with the Crimson Destruction Dragon God as an example. Even though he ended up losing in the most pathetic manner, I didn't get off lightly either. Truth be told, the Crimson Destruction Dragon God's power far exceeded even my highest estimate. He could actually hurt me this badly while his soul was already being eroded by mine. Kai Waiao's expression was somber, and her eyes were filled with gloom. She definitely wasn't being self-effacing, and she most definitely wasn't cracking a joke. I had thought that no matter how strong the Crimson Destruction Dragon God was, he would be no stronger than Yan 1. But in reality, he is actually stronger than even him. After Jai Xin and Jai Ling underwent the dark baptism of the eternal calamity of darkness, they became strong enough to fight evenly with Yan Xianxia as long as it was a 2-on-1 fight. However, they could barely even scratch the pure dragon god despite the fact that she was distracted. This forces me to have no choice but to reevaluate the strength of the other dragon gods. Kai and Yinger replied, Since you're so worried, why didn't you tell him that just now? You could even use that to find out why he is so confident in regards to the dragon god realm, which would also allay our worries. Kai Waiao smiled and shook her head once more. You should know that I'm never willing to do something unless I am completely confident in it succeeding. If I were him, I would have chosen to hole up in the Northern Divine region for at least 1,000 years, but he couldn't even wait 5. However, it is precisely because it's him that he has the right to be as willful as he wants to be. Therefore, I won't object to anything he sets his mind to. Neither am I willing to wheedle an answer out of him if he doesn't want to talk about it. The only thing I need to do is to use my own methods to raise the chances of victory as high as I possibly can. Isn't that the same for you? You're right, Kai and Yinger said as she looked at her. Though there are some differences. Whether he is being impulsive or calm, willful or scheming, whether he wins or loses in the future, lives or dies. I do have my worries, but I am not apprehensive about the results. Because no matter what happens in the future, I will follow him. Even if I end up being buried in a deep abyss, even if I end up being part of the most rotten part of the God realm's history, I still want my name to be written beside his. You're different. You shoulder the fate of the entire Northern Divine region. Therefore, you need to consider far more than I do. Kai Waiao turned her delicate head toward Kai and Yinger, and she quietly observed her for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was filled with implied meaning as she said, Yun Kaianying. To think that the Brahma monarch goddess who would stop at nothing to pursue her own interests would actually become someone who is fully content to be subordinated to a man. This is probably the most shocking miracle in the Eastern divine region. Subordinated? I wouldn't even get angry if someone were to call me his toy or slave right now. I might even feel a strange sort of satisfaction. Kai-and-I Yinger's eyes grew hooded as she spoke in what sounded like a very self-deprecating voice. Do you think that I was always this cheap by nature? Or do you think that he's secretly planted some sort of devilish curse on me? Kai Waiao gave a soft sigh. Isn't this also a sort of fortune and happiness? In fact, it's the most extravagant sort of happiness, isn't it? In the end, we should just trust him, Kai-and-I Yinger replied. Given his strong thirst for vengeance, he wouldn't have taken a step out of the northern divine region if he didn't have sufficient confidence in his plan. I'm actually more eager to see what will happen next than I am worried. When he faces off against the Dragon Monarch and the western divine region, what sort of card will he play then? It was at this moment that a gloomy and oppressive might fell from the skies, immediately causing both women to look to the side. Keijai's figure slowly descended from the sky. Even when she stood next to other women like Kai-and-I Yinger and Kai Waiao, she still seemed exceptionally small and delicate. Her dress was still the color of a rainbow, a symbol of some past nostalgia she simply wasn't willing to let go of. Only the belt she wore and the tassels of her dress had been changed to black. Furthermore, her face was still as flawless and milky white as it had been since Xianxia first met her. In the past, she had always looked like an exquisitely carved doll. Now this doll radiated a murky and dangerous aura and had unconsciously acquired a strange and bewitching charm. You got hurt? Keijai asked with some worry in her voice as she looked her Kai Waiao. It's just some minor injuries. Nothing that anyone needs to be concerned about, Kai Waiao said as she exhaled softly. Even little Keijai had been able to tell how badly injured she was with a single glance. It seemed like she had truly suffered some spectacular damage to her vital energy this time. Oh! Kai-and-I Yinger's eyes flitted between the two as a look of faint surprise appeared on her face. The two of you should be meeting for the first time, right? Why does it seem like you're so familiar with each other? Get lost, Keijai barked out coldly as she bared her naked killing intent at Kai-and-I Yinger. Kai Waiao quietly took a step backwards as if this matter didn't involve her at all. Sigh, my dear little heavenly wolf. This time, Kai-and-I Yinger didn't immediately leave. Instead, she let out a sad sigh, and a helpless look appeared on her snowy mien. Of course, she still looked as arrestingly beautiful as she always did as she feigned sadness and said, You should already have eavesdropped on the conversation between the Devil Queen and I, so you should know that I will stick to Xianxia in both life and death. Even he can forget about chasing me away, much less you. How about we try to get along instead? Her golden eyes turned toward Keijai and ripples could be seen in them. On account of the fact that you're his lawfully wedded wife, I'd be willing to take compromise on many things as long as you're willing to try for peace. I might not even mind if you asked me to call you Big Sister. Dream on. Keijai's eyes blazed with hate and malice as she straightforwardly rejected the strange words that Kai-and-I Yinger had just uttered. You led my aunt and big brother to their deaths and nearly killed my sister. I will never ever forgive you. Once we have defeated the Dragon God realm and you no longer of any use to him, I will be waiting with the executioner's blade. Oh my, there's no need to be so cruel, is there? Kai-and-I Yinger's voice turned soft and cottony, something that rarely happened as she feigned frailty and replied, Heavenly Wolf Zissou died for me willingly, and he died a satisfied man. You're well aware of that. As for the Heavenly Slaughter Star God, even though I did use Nan Wansheng to force her into the corner, I didn't manage to succeed in the end. I actually helped her meet Xianxia, and that was how you ended up with your current husband, you know. Since that's the case, shouldn't you be thanking me? Kai-and-I Yinger said as she languidly coiled a strand of golden hair around her finger. After that, she softly muttered to herself, he was hooking the big sister even while he secretly ate up the little sister. He really was a depraved beast even before he turned into a devil. You, Kai-and-I Yinger's strange words had caused Keijai's killing intent to waver. Your aunt died because of Yue Wuya's stupidity and Xing Jukong's heartlessness. Heavenly Wolf Zissou died for me all too willingly. The Heavenly Slaughter Star God died at Zhou Zuzi's hands. You should hate me, but that hatred shouldn't be the sort of hatred that can only be resolved with my death. If you truly aren't able to set aside your hatred, Kai-and-I Yinger sighed as if in deep sorrow. She clasped her slender fingers to her fantastically beautiful bosom and said, Then I'll just stand there and let you beat me up one time. How about that? Keijai's starry eyes started to narrow, the stars in her eyes starting to glitter with a dangerous glow. Are you sure about that? Of course it's a joke. Whoosh. A storm swirled in Kainai Yinger's wake while she appeared several kilometers away. Her voice sounded exceptionally carefree as it rang out through the air. "Little wolf, if this body ends up being battered and bruised, the one whose heart will hurt the most is your beloved husband. After all, I'm the most perfect toy in the world to him, something that a bratty little kid who can't grow up can never replace. He. Rumble. Devilish energy and killing intent erupted from Keijai's body at the same time, and the ground around her instantly cracked and broke apart. Just as she was about to take the skies, Kai Waiao grabbed her hand and gently restrained her. "You can't actually do anything to her, so why bother chasing?" Kai Waiao smiled as she shook her head. If it came to a war of words, even 10 Keijais wouldn't be Kainai Yinger's opponent. Keijai's small chest heaved violently for a few moments, but she didn't end up chasing after Kainai Yinger after all. It took a long while before she finally calmed down. After that, her head swiveled towards Kai Waiao as she began staring at her. Her skin resembled both snow and ice, and it was lustrous and pure white. The black mist that shrouded her body was composed of the highest grade of devilish energy in the current universe. Yet it actually seemed a little less black due to the glow of her dewy skin. Furthermore, her figure was made up of exquisite curves that Keijai simply couldn't find the words to describe, and she was possessed of a devilishly alluring charm which seized one's soul. She didn't even need to deliberately tease someone to instantly set their desires ablaze. In fact, she didn't even need to use her eyes or that devilish voice of hers to completely burn up a person's rationality, whether they were men or women. Keijai immediately swiveled her head away from it, and her chest started heaving again, despite the fact that she just managed to calm herself down with much difficulty. Kai Waiao blinked as she admired the red clouds that were slowly forming over the young girl's snowy face and neck. "Devil Queen, I'm going to ask you one question, and you have to answer me, no matter what," Keijai said as she stared at Kai Waiao with a serious expression on her face. Even her voice had turned serious and sincere. "Fine," Kai Waiao said with a faint smile. "Ask away." Keijai's lips opened, but no words came from her mouth. Her face soon started burning up to the point where her blush had started spreading from her face to the rest of her body. She hurriedly turned her face to the side and quietly bit down on her lower lip. After that, the young girl whispered to Kai Waiao in the softest and most sincere voice possible. How can I become like you?" She said the last half of her sentence in an incredibly quick manner. After she finished speaking, she bit down on her tender lower lip yet again, and she refused to look Kai Waiao in the eye. After a short pause, silvery laughter erupted from Kai Waiao's lips as she walked forward and whispered something into Keijai's ears. "This is something you should actually ask him. He's the real expert." At number percent, Keijai's body, which was as tense as a coiled spring, shuddered for a few moments before she suddenly turned around and spat. "All of the women of your kind are so incredibly petty. HMPH?" As she stared at her fleeing back, an unwitting smile appeared on Kai Waiao's face. She muttered to herself softly in a rather sheepish manner, "All of you? Actually, the last time you asked that question, I was the one you asked as well." In the distant skies high above the center of the deep-sea divine region, Tianguhu had run over at the fastest speed possible, and the moment Yun Qi's figure entered his vision, he knelt down and asked in an anxious voice, "Tianguhu greets your magnificence. I await your command. Tell this to all the higher and middle realm kings." Yun Qi's eyes contained a gloominess that it didn't have before. "Everyone is to assemble at the Deep Sea Royal Hall within the next 6 hours. I have something big to announce." Tianguhu's body shook violently before he cried out in a trembling voice, "Tianguhu hears and obeys. I will depart now." God Realm, the central main hall. The air was as solemn as it was oppressive. Every pocket of air, every inch of space felt like they were frozen by some sort of invisible energy. The Devil Queen, the witches, Keijai, Kainai, the Brahma ancestors, Guzhu, the Yama Emperor, the Yama Devils, the Moon Eaters, Tian Mui, Hu Tianxing, the higher and middle realm kings led by the great Viper Sage himself. Every key power in the northern divine region besides Yun Qi and the 3 Yama ancestors was concentrated in this hall. God Emperor Shishin, the Xunyuan God Emperor, and the Purple Micro God Emperor were present as well, but they didn't quite fit into the picture. The sheer density of darkness energy in the main hall caused the 3 of them to hold their breath for a very long time. A long wait later, a series of heavy but evenly paced footsteps appeared from outside. They went from faint to right outside the entrance in an instant. Buzz, the 3 God Emperors felt as if something had exploded right next to their ears and souls. The next moment, the solemn atmosphere crumbled, and all the dark practitioners in the chamber dropped to one knee and said in a tone that reminded the god-emperors of worshippers meeting their god in the flesh, "Your Magnificence?" Shishin, Xunyuan, and Purple Micro were a bit slow on the uptake, but they too dropped to their knees a fraction of a second later. The scene was so abrupt and grandiose that even Keijai had almost jumped to her feet. She subconsciously moved her right foot forward to emulate the people around her until she saw that Kaianai Yinger was kneeling. But Kai Weiao hadn't moved an inch from her seat. She immediately lifted her face, put on a cold and proud act, and even shot a disdainful look at Kaianai Yinger. The sound of Yun Qi's footsteps rippled the soul as the devil master made his way toward his seat. Behind him, the three Yama ancestors followed as silently as ghosts. As the three most terrifying existences in the northern divine region, their foremost duty was to protect Yun Qi. Kai Weiao would never use them for anything else unless she had no other choice. The central main hall was incredibly huge, and Yun Qi's gait was neither too slow nor too fast. Still, it took him a long time to reach his throne, and the northern region profound practitioners had absolutely no problems with that. Not a single one of them had moved their heads or even their gazes an inch throughout the whole thing. Kang Shishin, the Xunyuan God Emperor, and the Purple Micro God Emperor had been bowed and knelt to their whole lives. However, the simple scene before them still stunned them beyond words. It was because no one in this chamber was an insignificant person in their own right. Even the lowest-ranking profound practitioner was a middle-rank realm king. Forget the southern divine region, even the dragon god realm, which holds absolute power in the western divine region, didn't get to enjoy this level of privilege. The god emperors of the 5 realms certainly didn't need to drop to their knees when they met the dragon monarch, the strongest being in the entire world right now. The southern sea realm and the Brahma monarch realm were the leaders of their respective divine regions, but they were nowhere near powerful enough to command the other king realms by force. Just the same, the dragon monarch commanded the power to mobilize the 5 king realms and the star realms beneath them. But he could never command this level of obedience. These people looked like they would die for Yun Qi right now if that was his wish. Their surprise diminished a little when they recalled that the million-year-long tragedy of the northern divine region, but not their shock. In fact, it only grew stronger over time. It was because there wasn't a divine region in the entire primal chaos that commanded this level of faith, loyalty, and unity. There were countless ways the northern divine region could attempt to weaken the faith of their enemies, but the opposite was not so. The 3 divine regions could put in 10 times the effort to cause a fracture among the people of the northern divine region, but it would barely have any effect at all. Of all the qualities the northern divine region possessed, this might be the deadliest of them all. Finally, Yun Qi reached the throne and took his seat. He said, "Rise." And only then did the realm kings and god emperors rise back to their feet while still maintaining a respectful appearance and waited to receive his orders. "I have summoned everyone here today to make an important announcement. This announcement is directly tied to the final fate of the northern divine region, you and your future generations." His opening words alone caused everyone's hearts to become suspended in their throats. Kai Weiao and Kaianai Yinger frowned a little, and the 3 southern region god emperors held their breaths as if missing a single word would cost them their lives. However, Yun Qi suddenly glanced at the trio and asked, "Why are you here, Xunyuan Purple Micro?" It was difficult to discern any emotion behind his voice. Xunyuan God Emperor and Purple Micro God Emperors felt their heart rates quicken. They both took a step forward and replied, "Your Magnificence, we came to pay the Devil Queen a formal visit when we heard of her return. After you declared that you were about to announce something, we came in case we are needed. Your Magnificence, the civil war in the Purple Micro realm has been quelled. We are ready to carry out anything you need of us." Neither God Emperor was lying. The Devil Queen's trouncing of the Crimson Destruction Dragon God had shocked far more than just the Western Divine region. All across the world, the people's fear toward the Northern Divine region swelled as much as the lost faith in the Dragon God realm. As a result, the civil war in both the Xunyuan realm and the Purple Micro realm ended sooner than expected. This was why both the Xunyuan God Emperor and the Purple Micro God Emperor had rushed over to meet her. The likelihood that the devil race would rule the God realm was growing every day, so it became necessary for them to show their faces to the Devil Queen and pay their respects as soon as possible. "Get out," said Yun Qi, while the temperature in his eyes abruptly dropped a couple of degrees. He didn't deign to give them any explanation. The Xianxia God Emperor and the Purple Micro God Emperor felt a chill in their hearts, but they feigned calmness and replied quickly, "As you wish. We will withdraw right away. Please forgive us for our rudeness." Kang Shishin hurriedly stepped out as well. "The three of us shall wait outside the hall. Please call upon us if you need anything, Your Magnificence." "You may stay," said Yun Qi while shooting Kang Shishin a glance. The God Emperor abruptly raised his head, responded affirmatively to the command, and retreated to his position. His mask of shock and joy was impeccable. While the Xianxia God Emperor and the Purple Micro God Emperor withdrew in shame, they actually shot Kang Shishin a look of twisted jealousy. Kang Shishin was the first person to throw in his lot with Yun Qi, bend his knee, and swear his undying loyalty. For the first time ever, the two God Emperors learned a law of survival that was completely unfamiliar to their kind. The early traitor gets the right to be a dog. After silence had returned to the central hall, Yun Qi slowly rose to his feet and swept his gaze across the crowd. "It has only been months since we stepped out of the northern divine region, but we've already spread our darkness to two divine regions that have bullied us for 1,000,000 years. Your eyes, ears, and hands haven't deceived you. The divine regions may seem prosperous on the surface, but they are really a sheet of loose sand that can be scattered by a gust of wind. The so-called righteous, profound practitioners you once feared are corrupted, foolish, ungrateful, and cowardly. Their knees are soft, their souls are filthy, and even their blood stinks of rot." His undying hatred for the three divine regions was bared for all to see in just a couple of sentences. "They are the lowly ones compared to us. 1,000,000 years of rule, and they couldn't even withstand a couple of months of erosion. The endless oppression, the despair, the deaths. It is time to give it all back. The world is destined to be engulfed in darkness, and we are now just one step away from that day." Yun Qi turned his head toward the west before continuing. "The eastern divine region is in shambles, and the southern divine region is in chaos. Once the dragon god realm of the western divine region is destroyed, there won't be any power left in this world that can stand in our way. And this final step is right in front of us." He paused for a second before dropping the bombshell. "Starting today, we will spend 15 days to mobilize every power and resource there is to possess. 15 days from now, we will attack the dragon god realm." Everyone from the highest to the lowest raised their heads in shock. Their eyes were trembling, their blood was boiling, and their dark auras rippled with near uncontrollable excitement. Keijai furrowed her thin eyebrows and watched Yun Qi for a moment. When she turned to Kai Weiao, she was surprised to see that the Devil Queen wasn't showing any surprise at all. "I knew it," Kai and Yinger whispered to herself. From the moment Yun Qi said that he was going to announce something important, both Kai and Yinger and Kai Weiao guessed that he was talking about this. Of all the things he might consider important, this was probably the most important of them all. Excitement, anxiety, and confusion replaced the solemn air that was present in the chamber until now. Everyone knew that the day they warred against the dragon god realm was near, but this was still much sooner than anyone had expected. It was so soon that the devil people were more shocked than they were excited, and with shock came puzzlement and uncertainty. Yun Qi looked at his retainers and asked, "Is there anyone who has something to say?" Yan Xianxia obliged and stepped out into the open. "Your Magnificence, it is your guidance that led us all to this point, so I am sure that you've thought carefully before coming to this decision. However, I am a shallow man, and I cannot see as far as you do. In my opinion, the unrest in the southern divine region is nowhere as quelled as it was in the eastern divine region. They are intimidated, but the fire has not been beaten out of them. Moreover, our people have just finished relocating from the eastern divine region to the southern divine region. They are completely unfamiliar with their environment, and they will need a moment to collect themselves. With that in mind, is it not a bit hasty to invade the dragon god realm now?" Yan Xiangxiao's question was exactly what most people in the chamber were worried about. On the surface, the God Emperor seemed like he was questioning Yun Qi's decision, but in reality, he was prefacing Yun Qi's eventual reply. Instead of replying immediately, Yun Qi looked at the profound practitioners of the Burning Moon Realm and asked, "Do you have anything to say, Daeyaki?" Fen Daeyaki stepped out as commanded, considered his words, and said, "Daeyaki would like to listen to the Devil Queen's opinion first before giving my answer, Your Magnificence." Everyone looked at Kai Weiao only to look away half a breath later. In Yun Qi's announcement was the bombshell. Then Kai Weiao's presence was the spark that nearly caused their emotions to spiral out of control. Of all the people in the entire northern divine region, Xianxia was the only person who had the gall and power to look Kai Waiao in the eye. The Devil Queen smiled a bit before starting. The Yama Emperor's worry is well placed. No one here is privy to the Dragon God realm's full strength, but we know enough to know that it will be a grueling battle. Moreover, our Devil Master has no intentions of dragging out this war. He wishes to invest everything we have into this war and decide a victor as soon as possible. Knowing how high the stakes are, it makes perfect sense to proceed with the utmost caution and preparation. That was correct. The very first thing Xianxia said was that the announcement was tied to the final fate of the northern divine region, them and their future generations. Just as Kai Waiao had stated earlier, Xianxia had no intention of fighting the Dragon God realm the proper way. It was all out and do or die from the very beginning. Kang Shishin was thankful that his head was bowed, because he couldn't control the trembling coursing through his face or his hands right now. He was both shocked by the depth of Xianxia's madness and the bitterness of this upcoming war. What counts as the utmost caution and preparation, though? Kai Waiao's tone abruptly changed and became laced with devilish power. Your will to fight for yourselves, your people, and your future generations is your utmost caution. The darkness energy you conjure by boiling your very blood is your utmost preparation. If this war comes as a surprise to us, then it can only be worse for the Dragon God realm. To the world, our relocation to the south is to avoid the vengeance of the Dragon God realm, a display of weakness. This means that the Dragon God realm will never expect us to launch an all-out assault on them before we have even solidified our footing in the southern divine region. This element of surprise will be the first blade of darkness to pierce the Dragon God realm. As for how effective this blade of darkness will be, that will depend on how much courage and determination you are able to muster when we face down the Dragon God realm. The shock and confusion in the northern region profound practitioners' eyes swiftly turned into red-hot passion. Their darkness profound energy boiled like black flames before they realized it. Sufficient caution, perfect preparation. They had won so many battles in a row that they nearly forgot the oath they made to themselves when they stepped out of the northern divine region. The promise that they would burn their lives and souls to overturn the fate of the northern divine region and to return true freedom to darkness, no matter the cost. To that end, they would overcome any obstacle or hardships. They must succeed no matter how insurmountable the odds. Waiao the side-eye while she was making her speech. He didn't look away for a very long time. He had thought that Kai Waiao would try to stop him. He was aware that his decision was abrupt, impulsive, unwise, and the complete opposite of her modus operandi, which was to act only after sufficient plotting. It was why he had skipped discussing his decision with her and went straight to the announcement in the first place. Reality turned out to be the opposite, however. She had spoken, but not only was she supporting his announcement, she was working to convert the northern region profound practitioners' worries into fighting spirit. Moreover, Kai Waiao continued, the recent defeat of the Crimson Destruction Dragon God has greatly damaged the Dragon God's reputation. I am sure that the Dragon God realm will experience some unrest for some time, and the 5 king realms of the Western Divine region will harbor doubts regarding their power. Finally, the Dragon Monarch has been absent from the Dragon God realm, and he is not expected to return anytime soon. His absence is far more than just the Dragon God realm missing their strongest fighter. Without the Dragon Monarch, there is no one person who can truly command the Dragon God realm, and the Dragon God realm's control over the 5 king realms is greatly diminished as well. Therefore, Kai Waiao rose to her feet and walked next to Xianxia. His Magnificence's decision isn't as abrupt as it appears. In fact, it is our best window to launch our invasion. Starting now, the war you face is the war that will decide the fate of the northern divine region. This is the battle all our ancestors dreamed of fighting. This is why you left your homeland and ventured into a foreign land. Discard your cowardice, your distractions, and your worries. When the battle begins, all you need to do is to unleash the hatred and belief that have accumulated in your bones for 1,000,000 years, and our Devil Master will deal with the rest. No matter what the outcome of this battle turns out to be, victory or defeat, glory or shame, our Devil Master will always be with us. Your Magnificence is wise. Your Majesty is wise, Fendayaki said loudly before making a full bow. This decision may seem hasty at first glance, but it is our best window to defeat the Dragon God realm. The fact is, His Magnificence and Her Majesty have suppressed the Eastern Divine region and thrown the Southern Divine region into chaos in just a couple months' time. With His Magnificence and Her Majesty at the helm, Not even the Dragon God realm will stand in our way." The Devil Master had made the announcement, and the Devil Queen had expressed her wholehearted support of the plan. The former preceptor and Weissman of the Burning Moon realm needed no prompting to say the right words. Xianxia looked up with determination in his eyes. "Xianxia feels enlightened by Her Majesty's words. Xianxia will order my men to ready every usable devil weapon and formation right after this meeting. As for the Yama devils, Yama ghosts, and Yama soldiers, they are already ready. We can attack the Dragon God realm tomorrow if need be." Tian Guhu stepped out and spoke from the heart. "The Imperial Heaven realm will follow His magnificence to hell and back. We neither fear nor regret anything." Huo Tianxing shouted on top of his lungs. 15 days later, the braves of Desolate Calamity Realm promised to stain the Dragon God realm with its denizens' blood, or die trying. The Great Viper Sage answered, "The Divine Python realm has awaited this day for too long. We will follow His magnificence into the Dragon God realm and destroy the Dragon Gods." The spirited declaration of war by the leaders of the 3 King realms and 3 best upper star realms of the Northern Divine region annihilated all lingering worry and hesitation. For a moment, every devil person in the central hall was shouting their battle cries with passion and bloodthirst. If Yunqi were to order them to attack Dragon God realm tomorrow, he had no doubt that they would obey and soak themselves in a sea of blood. A rare moment of hesitation flashed across Yunqi. He was fully aware that Kai Weiao had cleverly avoided mentioning the Dragon God realms, or even the 5 King realms of the Western Divine region, bottomless foundation and immeasurable power. She had intentionally exaggerated the value of his chosen timing and element of surprise. She had transformed what was obviously a reckless and selfish decision into the heroic move that would save the entire Northern Divine region. She had even laced her voice with the invisible power of soul stealing. The people had no idea that their thoughts had been influenced by her ever so subtly. "Kainying, you will assemble the troops of Brahma Monarch God realm. It is time for them to surrender their lives," Yunqi ordered. "Make sure to keep the movement as invisible as possible." "I will return to the Eastern Divine region personally to carry out your order," Kaianai Yinger replied. "Keijai," Yunqi started but cut himself short and shot her a gentle smile. He didn't finish his sentence. Keijai understood his intention anyway and replied indifferently, "I will contact the Star God realm." Her eyes flashed with indecipherable emotions as she said this. "This is the first and final chance I will afford them." "Very well," Yunqi nodded lightly. Finally, Yunqi looked to the one and only Southern Region God Emperor in the hall. "Kang Shishin, you will sort out the resources you plundered from the Southern Sea God realm and turn them into war provisions. Also, I don't trust the Xunyuan realm and Purple Micro realm enough to use their men, but you will take anything and everything they have that will aid in our war efforts, understand?" Kang Shishin responded respectfully, "Fret not, your magnificence. I know exactly what resources they have. I promise you I will make them spit out every last coin they have in their pockets. As for myself, ask me for anything you need, manpower, artifacts, formations, ships, and more, and I will provide them all." Yunqi had full confidence in Kang Shishin in this regard. After all, the entire devil race was sitting on his realm right now, and he was forced to surrender all his possessions whether he liked it or not. Therefore, the venomous man would definitely strip the Xunyuan realm and the Purple Micro realm of every last possession to make himself feel better. He wouldn't even leave them a loincloth to cover their privates. Ready everything that needs to be readied in 15 days. In 15 days, we will assemble in the 10 Directions Deep Sea realm and travel to the Dragon God realm from here. Until then, keep your movements invisible and give no reason for the Dragon God realm to mobilize the 5 King realms ahead of time, understand? "As you command." The devil people bowed their heads with unbridled excitement. Yunqi swept his gaze across the central hall once more. "All right, is there anything else anyone would like to say?" Kang Shishin rose to his feet immediately. "Your Magnificence, Shishin has one question that could use some enlightenment." "Speak." Yunqi eyed him. Kang Shishin began. "There is a vast gulf between the 10 Directions Deep Sea realm and the Dragon God realm, and we must pass through multiple star realms before we can reach it. No matter how well we conceal ourselves during these 15 days, the noise and the stirring of auras during the day of departure are sure to alarm the Dragon God realm to action. By the time we reach them, the Dragon God realm would be waiting for us with the armies of the 5 King realms and the other star realms of the Western Divine region, would they not?" He had brought this up in hopes of showing off his usefulness. But he realized that no one was reacting to it even before he finished his question. He immediately realized that he was probably asking a foolish question. It was because he didn't know about the primordial profound arc, at least not in depth. Unfortunately, it was way too late to take back his question. However, he was quick-witted enough to change the essence of his statement to that of a request for instructions. With that in mind, is there any order you would like to give me, Your Magnificence? The sooner I know, the sooner I can complete the preparations. Xianxia didn't answer his question. He simply replied, "You will know when it is time." "Yes, Your Magnificence." Kang Shishin withdrew in embarrassment. The arrival of the devil race had caused the blue sky of the 10 Directions deep sea realm to change drastically. After Xianxia walked out of the central hall, he stared at the gloomy sky above him for a very, very long time. Almost. It's almost time. Zhou Zuzi had turned into a wretched dog, Kaianai Fanshan was dead, Xia Qingyu was dead, Nan Wansheng was dead, the eternal heaven god realm was drenched in blood. The Brahma monarch god realm was now his. The moon god realm had exploded into smithereens, and the southern sea god realm had crumbled into ruins. There was only one man and one place left to destroy now. The dragon monarch and the dragon god realm. Once all who must die are dead, everything else, the people, the land, life, death, heaven, or hell, would be his to command. The only question left, the one that even he didn't have an answer for, was whether his hatred would diminish after the death of Long Bai, or worsen to the point where it can only be vented via violence. After all, he was just so disappointed and hateful of the entire god realm, no, the entire world. A fragrant scent passed across his nose. It was Kai Weiao standing beside him and watching his expressionless face. Xianxia faced toward her and returned her gaze. "How confident are you in this war exactly?" She asked him a most natural question instead of criticizing his decision. "The death of Long Bai, 100%. Xianxia stared into her dark, bottomless eyes and replied honestly, "But the destruction of the dragon god realm and the western divine region, not so much. Also, this war is definitely going to cost a lot of lives. Even if we obtain the final victory, the core strength of the northern divine region is sure to wilt away." "I understand." Kai Weiao nodded and stopped her questions there. "Don't worry. I promise you I won't die no matter what," Kai Weiao said suddenly. "After all, I can't save you if I'm dead, can I?" By the time her words came to an end, the Devil Queen herself was long gone. "Xianxia, Master," He Ling's voice suddenly rang from Xianxi's consciousness space. "Are you planning to use that power you used to kill Fen Daejun to kill Long Bai?" A 100% confidence in killing Long Bai, forget Kai Weiao. Even the simple He Ling had thought of that power immediately. It was the only possibility after all. Although Xianxia possessed the dragon god's soul origin, a weapon that could suppress even the soul of the dragon monarch himself, it was nowhere enough to give Xianxia a 100% chance of beating Long Bai. Right now, Long Bai was the strongest profound practitioner in the entire primal chaos. Therefore, the one and only power that could kill him was a power that transcended the limits of this world. The god Ash he had used to kill the burning moon god emperor. Xianxia didn't deny it. "Master, you really can't." He Ling's voice turned panicky. "You were so wounded that day you almost. Calm down, He Ling." Xianxia shot her a reassuring smile. "It is true that I wore myself out pretty badly that day, but thanks to that I also more or less figured out my absolute limits. I was weaker at the time, and yet I was still able to empower myself with 2 lost powers of the divine and keep God Ash active for several breaths. It will only burden me less now. I am sure I won't die from overexertion even if I use God Ash while carrying heavy injuries." He Ling's worry did not lessen after hearing his words. "But even if you manage to kill Long Bai, you will both be weakened and injured at the end of the battle. If the dragon gods or an enemy of equal power were to approach you during this time, you will." Xianxia shook her head again. "The Devil Queen said she would protect me, didn't she? She never goes back on her word." "But this is the price I must pay." Xianxia cut her off before she could finish. "This is the only way I have that can kill Long Bai in the shortest amount of time possible. There are other ways, but I can't wait that long." If anything, Xianxia was disappointed that Long Bai wasn't in the dragon god realm right now. The way he was now, he would like nothing more than the opportunity to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. That being said, he was sure that Long Bai would show up when he drowned the dragon god realm in blood. He Ling fell silent. As the person whose life was literally linked to Xianxi's, She knew better than anyone just how bright and urgent his desire for vengeance was. A long time later, her voice rang inside his mind once more. "I know I can't stop you, Master, but I want you to promise one thing no matter what." "No matter what," she said. This was the first time he heard a forceful demand from the obedient and mild-natured He Ling. Her voice was laced with both anxiety and strange hope. Xianxia was surprised, but he answered, "All right, I'll do my best not to disappoint my He Ling." Xianxia to make that promise, He Ling's mood grew a lot less heavy. A dazzling green light twinkled for a brief moment before He Ling's slender body appeared in front of Xianxia. She held both her hands up, and an exceptionally dense and mysterious cluster of white light was seen slowly rotating within them. "The eternal heaven pearl!" A light flashed through Xianxia's eyes. Did it undergo some sort of change? Even though Xianxia was the master of the eternal heaven pearl, his mastery over it was different from his mastery over the sky poison pearl. In truth, he was more like its indirect owner. The true master and controller of the eternal heaven pearl was He Ling. However, since Xianxia was He Ling's master, and she shared an existence with him, that made Xianxia the master of the eternal heaven pearl. As such, he could issue simple commands, but he couldn't sense if any changes happened to it. He Ling replied in a lilting voice, "During this period of time, I've been doing my best to recover and merge the remnants of the eternal heaven pearl's power. Even though it has been many years since the eternal heaven pearl last opened the eternal Heaven-Divine realm, the last time truly overtaxed it. It's also possible that it can only recover at this incredibly slow rate due to the current environment within the primal chaos. I've only been able to recover a very small amount of its strength despite my efforts. However, this tiny amount of energy is sufficient for me to open the eternal Heaven-Divine realm for a short period of time." A look of surprise appeared on Xianxia's face, but a warmth also spread through his heart. This wood spirit girl who had bound her life together with his was always silently accompanying him and sacrificing herself for him. Gathering the remaining power of the eternal heaven pearl sounded simple enough, but it actually required a vast amount of energy, concentration, and soul power. After all, they had only seized the eternal heaven pearl a few short months ago, so He Ling still couldn't perfectly control it. Moreover, it was no simple task to control a power on the level of the eternal heaven pearl in the first place. "How long can you open it for?" Xianxia asked in a gentle voice. He couldn't bear to reject her outright. 3 years, He Ling replied. "However, because its power was greatly weakened, the eternal Heaven-Divine realm won't be able to bend the laws of time as greatly as it did the last time. It will only be 100 times slower this time." This means 3 years in the eternal Heaven-Divine realm will be about 11 days in the real world, and only 2 people can enter the eternal Heaven-Divine realm if we want all factors to remain the same. Every additional person will severely reduce the amount of time that can be spent in the pearl. After the profound God convention had concluded in the Eastern Divine region, the eternal Heaven God Emperor had exhausted all of the power contained within the eternal Heaven Pearl to strengthen the eternal Heaven-Divine realm to an incredible degree. This eternal Heaven-Divine realm could hold 1,000 people and would last for a full 3,000 years, but it would only take 3 years of time in the real world. It had not only remained activated for a very long time, it had also slowed time by 1,000-fold. Currently, He Ling could only open it for 3 years at best, and she could only slow time by 100-fold, so the eternal Heaven-Divine realm would only last for 11 days in the real world before it collapsed. 3 years is an extremely short amount of time, and most profound practitioners will not benefit from it at all. However, Master is different. This amount of time is more than sufficient for you to take a very big step forward in terms of strength. You might very well break through to the Divine Master realm in that amount of time. If that happens, Master should also undergo a miraculous transformation, and the threat that the Dragon God realm poses to you will be vastly reduced. Vastly, vastly reduced. Furthermore, these 11 days of time in the real world won't alter the command that Master just issued either. He Ling was trying her best to persuade Xianxia. She even held the cluster of pale divine light up toward him as her eyes sparkled with hope. However, those emerald eyes were also trembling gently as light refracted in them. She was deathly afraid that she would be rejected, and it was born out of the purest care and concern for her master. However, he could only gently shake his head in the end. "He Ling, you know this. I can't wait, not even a day longer," Xianxia said in a voice that was firm but also contained all the gentleness he could muster. The hopeful light in the young girl's eyes dimmed as she softly whispered, "But it's only 11 days, but to me it will feel like 3 years." He took a step forward, his hands gently circling around He Ling's slender and frail-looking waist. If I had sufficient reason and patience, I would have buried myself in the northern divine region for many, many years. Given the heretic god and devil emperor legacies that I possess, I'm confident that I'll be able to squash the dragon monarch by myself one day. In fact, I might very well be able to squash the entire dragon god realm by myself. But I can't wait. I couldn't even wait 10 years, much less tens of thousands of years. You know this. From the moment I escaped from the eastern divine region to the moment I stepped out of the northern divine region, only 4 years has passed. Hatred is the most terrible and terrifying thing in this world. Even though I was once lost in the maze of my own hatred and resentment, there's no way I will be able to endure its terrible effects on my mind once more. During these 4 years, I feel as if my soul is being smelted in the hellfire of purgatory with every passing second. Every time I close my eyes, I'm afraid that I will randomly fall into a deep sleep. Because until I have taken my vengeance and killed everyone who deserves killing, I won't be able to face my parents, Wuxin, Kei, Zuer, and countless others. Even in my dreams. I can't even count how many times I nearly went insane because of my hatred, and I've had to use all of my strength to suppress this desire every single time it seized me. In regards to this, he was most fortunate that he had Xianxia Yinger, the lady goddess herself, to vent his emotions on over and over again. When I made up my mind to step out of the northern divine region and dye this universe in blood, it was also because I had already reached the limit of what I could endure. "I understand. I've always understood," He Ling said as she hurriedly withdrew that pale white light. She immediately leaned forward to embrace Xianxia with all of her might. She had also once been consumed by a hatred that devoured both her soul and her mind, so she knew just how tortuous it was to live like that. She who had achieved her great vengeance now felt incredible guilt for using concern to coerce Xianxia. Xianxia said, "Don't worry. I don't dare estimate how sane I actually am right now, but even if I am completely consumed by hatred, I won't let it rob me of a chance to achieve my objectives. After all, the only thing that is worse to me than unfulfilled vengeance right now is dying a foolish death. Besides, the thing that finally convinced me to extend the devilish claws of vengeance is something known only to you, He Ling. Even the Devil Queen and Xianxia are not aware of it." He Ling gently nodded the head which was resting on Xianxia's chest. Xianxia looked up as black light flashed in his eyes. Of the 6 king realms of the Western Divine Region, 5 of them are part of the dragon race. Now that I have finally completely merged with that power, I will now be able to prepare my gift for them. That is my true ace in the hole. I'm not able to explain everything to the Devil Queen, but not only do I have full confidence that I will kill Long Bai, I'm also 70% sure that I can destroy the Dragon God realm. Even if the worst possible outcome occurs and I'm defeated, even if some unknown variable causes me to be completely rooted, I can just retreat back to the northern divine region and continue gathering power. At that time, no matter how tortuous things are, I will definitely be able to endure until my next opportunity to take revenge as long as I have you by my side. So, Xianxia bent down, his hot breath gently caressing the young girl's ear. There is no need for you to worry, and there is even less need for you to work yourself to the bone. All you need to do is to quietly accompany me and look after me. As she leaned into Xianxia's chest, He Ling closed her eyes, her long eyelashes gently trembling. All right. Many things were quietly moving in the background of the southern divine region and eastern divine region, and all of them ultimately flowed back to the 10 directions deep sea realm. The western divine region had fallen into a deep silence ever since the Crimson Destruction Dragon God's defeat, and there was no more news that came out of it. Everyone else was guessing that they were waiting for the return of the Dragon Monarch. Since they had taken such a humbling loss, the Dragon God realm would most likely grit its teeth and endure until the Dragon Monarch returned. It was highly unlikely that they'd launch any actions against the devils of the north in the meanwhile. The days slowly passed by, and the aura around the 10 directions deep sea realm grew ever more dark and oppressive. A restless and eager dark energy was beginning to roil in the space around the King realm. There were only 7 days left before the date Xianxia had set as the fateful day they attacked the Dragon God realm. During this time, Xianxia was in charge of orchestrating the battle, and Xianxia Yinger had yet to return from the eastern divine region. In the meantime, the entire devil race was readying itself for battle. They made sure their bodies were in peak condition and that all of their profound artifacts were fully powered. On this day, a small, profound ark landed in the 10-direction deep sea realm, and it received yet another 2 distinguished guests. Big Brother Xianxia. When the doors of the profound ark opened, a voice as ephemeral and beautiful as a spring shower rang out from within before its owner had even appeared. It was an exceptionally chirpy and bright voice, which clearly expressed the owner's utter lack of regard for propriety. It was obvious that she didn't care who heard her voice, and she was simply reveling in her own happiness. Black robes fluttered in the air as Xianxia darted out of the profound ark like a black butterfly. The moment she sensed that only Xianxia's aura and figure remained, she immediately plunged into his arms and wrapped her arms tightly around his waist. She snuggled him with a fierce vigor, her face as fair and dewy as it had been since the day they met. "Why'd you come?" Xianxia gently cupped Xianxia's face in his hand. As her supple and tender skin filled his hands, he felt a gentle warmth spread through his chest. Actually, he didn't even need to guess. This was definitely because Kai Yinger had sent a sound transmission to Xianxia. "Of course I had to come." Xianxia lifted her head to stare straight into Xianxia's eyes. It was as if those star-filled eyes were unwilling to ever shift away from his. "And I'm not the only one who came." A figure that was as beautiful and willowy as a celestial maiden slowly stepped out of the profound ark. The lovely lady was dressed in sky-blue robes that fluttered gently in the breeze. The hem of her skirt danced teasingly as moonlight seemed to flow on it like water. Her bearing was as graceful and elegant as ever. Her beautiful jade neck was tall and proud, and her long raven hair flowed to her waist, just like Xianxia. A glamorous light danced and flowed in her beautiful eyes, as if it was reflected in a mirror. Her serene and composed expression only added to her grand beauty as it lent her an air of exquisite ephemerality. "The glazed light realm king?" Xianxia said in a rather shocked voice as he watched the celestial beauty slowly float to the ground. He wasn't really surprised at Xianxia's arrival. However, he had definitely not expected Xianxia to come upon receiving the news that they were about to attack the Dragon God realm. Xianxia greeted him. "Your Magnificence. The Eastern Divine Region still lives in fear to this day, and the Southern Divine Region has been trampled by you in the blink of an eye. Your Magnificence is truly an almighty talent with thoughts no one can ever guess." "Glazed Light Realm King." Xianxia's eyes grew focused, and his voice was a little foreboding. "Since you've already received the news, you should know exactly who I'm fighting next. Aren't you afraid that the Glazed Light Realm will be pushed into a dead-end if I lose?" Xianxia faintly smiled, and this extremely rare moment was engraved in Xianxia's memory for the first time. "Mei was betrothed to you long ago, and she's since been considered part of the devil race. As for me, I am here as Xianxia, and the only thing I've brought with me from the Glazed Light Realm is this jade rivulet sword, my trusty lifelong companion. I'm not the Glazed Light Realm king right now. I'm only a big sister who simply can't stop worrying about her little sister's safety. If your Magnificence does not mind, you can simply call me Yingyu." Xianxia nodded his head, but he did not reply. "Also, this is my father's wish and will as well." Xianxia flashed another one of those all-too-rare smiles while she gave Xianxia, who simply refused to detach herself from Xianxia, a long and deep look. Before the battle with the Dragon God realm was settled, and the future was set in stone, the Glazed Light Realm really belonged in a no-man's land. However, simply standing by Xianxia's side filled Xianxia with a pure and childlike joy, making her seem like a fairy which knew not of cares nor sorrow. In the past, Xianxia would silently sigh and shake her head at her sister's behavior. But now, she was starting to have a strange admiration for it, expressing all her emotions freely while fully living in the moment without a single regret. Perhaps that was the best way to live a meaningful life. "I will always remember the Glazed Light Realm's love and affection for me," Xianxia said as he looked at Xianxia. He smiled faintly and continued, "And that includes your love and affection as well." Xianxia froze for a moment as a stunned look appeared on her face. Xianxia had said many strange things to her over this intervening period. This, coupled with Xianxia's sudden smile, made it hard for her to tell whether Xianxia meant love and affection in a platonic manner or not. After a brief period of awkward silence, the only way she could respond was to turn her gaze away from his. Xianxia had full view of her beautiful and jade-white profile as she whispered, "Your praise is far too generous. However, no matter what the result of the upcoming battle with the Dragon God realm is, I hope that your magnificence will at least protect his own life." "Of course I will," Xianxia replied with a smile, his hand gently gripping Shui Meiyin's tiny one. "Even though fate is very cruel, there are still many beautiful things in this world, just like the smiles of Meiyin and Yingyu. I won't be willing to die, no matter the outcome of the battle." Perhaps it was because she had become far too sensitive, but Shui Yingyu simply couldn't tell whether Yunqi's words were platonic or not. She unconsciously curled her jade-like fingers as her heart began to ripple, but she simply nodded her head and said, "That's good then. Since you said that Meiyin should be far less worried now, I believe it's time for me to visit the Devil Queen, so I'll take my leave now." "Excuse me." Profound energy rippled like an ocean wave, but the mark Shui Yingyu left in space felt a little more flustered than normal. "Hee." Shui Meiyin suddenly let out a coquettish laugh while in his embrace. "What's so funny?" Yunqi asked as he gently caressed her face. It was clear that he didn't want to let go of her. "HMPH, you actually flirted with my sister right in front of me, and you're asking me what's so funny." She turned her nose up at him, but her angry voice contained no anger at all. It actually contained a few notes of happiness and satisfaction. Chi immediately laughed. He rolled her face in his hands like he was rolling a pile of dough and said, "What sort of silliness are you spouting? This is your sister we're talking about. We're about to take part in a great battle, so there's no way I would have such strange thoughts right now." HMPH, Shui Meiyin gave a playful snort. "Even if your thoughts aren't honest, your actions and your words certainly were." Yunqi, HUUUH. "Over the last 2 months, I made sure to mention you at least once a day in front of my sister," Shui Meiyin said with a devious twinkle in her eyes. Her voice dropped to a mysterious hush as she continued. "I've also, secretly, let her know that you've always had improper thoughts about her, and you'd often peek at her back when she wasn't looking. I even told her that you asked me to ask her if she wanted to be one of your wives." At number %, Yunqi's eyes widened dramatically, and his scalp instantly went numb. When did I ever say such a thing?" "You never did," Shui Meiyin said as she shot him an obvious wink. A hiss could be heard as Yunqi sucked in a cold breath of air. No wonder Shui Yingyu had reacted to his words in such a strange way. "I don't care," Shui Meiyin said as her starry eyes sparkled, and her tender and moist lips curved up into an adorable and mischievous smile. "Big Sister is the most beautiful and perfect angel in the whole wide world. I refuse to let any man touch her unless it's Big Brother Yunqi." Yunqi. "If worst comes to worst, I'll just use my divine stainless soul to knock her unconscious one day. Then I'll take off all her clothes and deposit her in Big Brother Yunqi's bed. Since Big Brother Yunqi's a super huge pervert, he definitely won't be able to let such an opportunity pass him by." He. It sounded as if she was merely talking about this childish prank as a hypothetical scenario, but Yunqi actually saw a resolute determination and eagerness flash through her eyes. He also hadn't heard the words super huge pervert in a very long time. "Let's talk about it next time, okay?" Yunqi groaned, plaintive and helpless. However, his heart, which had been burdened by a mountain's worth of pressure over the last few days, had subconsciously started relaxing. Shui Meiyin suddenly whirled around and hugged Yunqi's arm with both of hers. The soft bulge of her chest pressed into his arm as she said, "This is the first time I've ever come to the southern divine region, but I've heard many things about it since I was very young. This is all 99th Brother's fault. He kept telling me stories about the southern divine region, and he always said that if I ever had a chance to visit, I definitely needed to go to a place called the 7-Star Realm no matter what." "The 7-Star Realm?" Yunqi immediately started to search through all the knowledge he had regarding the southern divine region, but he simply couldn't recall that name. It's a very small lower star realm, so Big Brother Yunqi has probably never heard of it, Shui Meiyin said in an entrancingly musical voice. "According to the coordinates that 99th Brother gave me, it isn't very near the 10 Directions deep sea realm, but it isn't very far either. If we go fast, we should be able to reach it in 10 to 12 hours. Can we go there together, please?" "Right now?" Yunqi asked as his left eyebrow twitched in surprise. "That's right. 99th Brother told me about the place way too many times, so now that I've finally come to the southern divine region, the first thing I want to do is visit the 7-Star Realm." Shui Meiyin looked at him, the stars in her eyes sparkling with expectant joy. It was clear that she had wanted to visit this small star realm for a very long time. Yunqi thought that she was joking at first, but his second thought was to reject her. This trip would take at least 10 hours, even given their speed, so it was definitely a rather long trip to make. The entire process of going there, taking in the sights and sounds, and coming back would take at least a day. There were only 7 days left before they launched their attack on the Dragon God realm. And as the real core of the Northern Divine Region's forces, there was no way that he could waste any time doing such a thing during such a critical period. Let's go now, okay? Okay. Her voice was soft and cottony as she shook Xianxia's arm like an eager puppy. Her eyes were filled with such hope that Xianxia swallowed the words of rejection he was just about to say. What's so special about this 7-star realm anyway? What makes you so eager to go? Xianxia asked. Woo! She seemed to be very earnestly pondering the question before an adorably mischievous look appeared on her jade face, and she pressed her tender lips to his ear. Actually, even though 99th brother did mention it many times, I'm really just looking for an excuse, okay? I just want to have big brother Xianxia all to myself for one day, just the two of us. Please, her warm breath tickled his ear as her soft voice stole into his soul. Xianxia could even feel the young girl playfully flick her tongue into his ear a few times, sending a jolt of electricity down his spine. All right, let's go take a look at the 7-star realm then, Xianxia said. There wasn't even a single trace of reluctance in his voice. During the time I've spent in the Southern Divine Region, I've never truly been able to take in the sights and the sounds. You know what? It doesn't sound like a bad idea to relax a little before this showdown with the Dragon God realm. He simply couldn't reject Xianxia, and in truth, he didn't want to reject her any longer. She had sacrificed far too much for him, but he had never been able to do anything for her. There was no reason he couldn't indulge this small whim of hers today. After he sent 2 swift sound transmissions to Kai Weiao and Xianxia, Xianxia wrapped his arm around Xianxia's small and slender waist and said, "Let's go. I don't care if it's the 7-star realm or the 9-star realm, I'll go wherever you want me to today." The stars in Xianxia's eyes sparkled with all of their brilliant luster as her grip on his arm grew even tighter. She leaned her delicate head against his shoulder before she suddenly giggled and said, "Should I ask big sister along as well?" "Please don't," Xianxia said as he shook his head in a panicked fluster. "I can help you take advantage of her, you know. Stop playing around. Hee. Just as the two of them were about to depart, Keijai suddenly appeared in front of them. Keijai had known who Xianxia was for a long time. During the Profound God Convention, Keijai had seen the then 15-year-old Xianxia via the Eternal Heaven projection. However, today was the first time the two girls officially met. Xianxia's bearing and appearance had undergone an earth-shattering change since then, but Keijai's appearance hadn't changed one bit thanks to her heavenly wolf divine power. However, now that she had fallen into darkness, she had lost her free-spirited and lovely innocence, and what replaced it was a chilling darkness that sent shudders down everyone's spines. When she saw the couple stuck together, Keijai didn't say anything or even stop. She simply continued to fly into the distance. Xianxia was about to say something, but Xianxia beat him to it. "Big sister Keijai?" Keijai hesitated for a brief moment before stopping. As she turned around, both girls' eyes met. One pair was as gloomy as the abyss, but the other sparkled like all the stars in the sky. "Big sister," Keijai said in a dry voice. Xianxia wasn't sure whether she was expressing bemusement or dissatisfaction with that form of address. If one counted their ages normally, Xianxia was actually quite a few years younger than Keijai. But if the time she spent in the Eternal Heaven-Divine realm was included in the count, then Xianxia was about 3,000 years older than Keijai. Therefore, the question as to whom should address whom as big sister was actually quite a complicated one indeed. However, it didn't even seem to be a question at all to Xianxia. "I am the glazed light realm's Xianxia, big brother Xianxia's fiancé," Xianxia said in a rather serious manner. "I know." Keijai's reply, however, was cold and curt. Unfortunately for her, Xianxia's bright smile didn't falter one bit. "Then big sister Keijai, I'll borrow big brother Xianxia for today and return him to you tomorrow." After taking a single glance at Xianxia, Keijai suddenly turned her face away from them and said in a cold voice, "It's not like he belongs to me or anything, so there's no need to return him." After she said that, profound energy erupted from her body, and she sped away, leaving space quaking in her wake. Xianxia opened his mouth before he finally breathed a sigh in the end. Keijai had greatly changed over the last few years. His mind wandered back to the day he first met her. She was an extremely adorable girl dressed in rainbow robes who buzzed around him like a mischievous and adorable fairy. Her bright and inquisitive mind allowed her to quickly puzzle out his identity, and she used the name Little Jasmine to lead him around in circles. But now it seemed as if she had sealed away her previous world and forced herself to step into a pitch-black world of darkness. As he looked down, he discovered that Shui Meiyin was staring fondly in Keija's direction, and she continued doing so for a long time. "What are you looking at?" Xianxia asked. Shui Meiyin's lips parted, but no words came from her mouth. It was only after a while that she whispered, "I'm looking at someone who is doing her best to wrap herself in coldness, darkness, and hatred so that everyone will think that she is a cold and dark person. However, in truth, she's just an exhausted little girl who has given up on herself, a little girl who is terribly lonely and filled with worries. A little girl who is afraid of herself, but even more afraid that the people she loves will hate her." Shui Meiyin's words violently plucked at the strings of Xianxi's heart. "Big brother Xianxi," Shui Meiyin said in a soft voice as she lifted her head to look at him. "The next time this happens, please don't let her run away again. You need to chase after her, catch her, and hold her tight. The more she struggles, the harder you need to hug her, until she doesn't have the strength to struggle anymore. She looks like she doesn't need anyone, but in actual fact, she needs you more than me, more than anyone else in this world." Xianxi looked in the direction Keijai had left in and fell into a small daze. But after that, a smile appeared on his face and said, "You always like to say the strangest things, let's go." The two of them held hands as they flew out of the 10 Directions deep sea realm, taking in the vast sky-blue king realm as they ascended higher and higher. "What has your father's condition been like?" Xianxi asked. "Royal father is in great shape. He's been in an exceptionally good mood ever since he found out that his profound strength would recover to its peak, so he's doing better than ever," Shui Meiyin said in a cheery voice. Xianxi replied apologetically. "The situation in the southern divine region changed all too suddenly, so I haven't been able to help Senior Shui recover from his wounds. Once I kill Long Bai and break the Dragon God realm, I will return with you to the Glazed Light realm." "You better mean what you say this time." Shui Meiyin moved Xianxi's hand to her chest, allowing him to clearly feel the steady beat of her heart. They kept passing by Northern Divine Region profound practitioners who were releasing their darkness profound energy. The moment these profound practitioners sensed Xianxi's aura or happened to catch sight of him, they immediately fell to the ground and prostrated themselves in front of the Devil Master. Their reverence and loyalty for Xianxi was all too clear. He elicited the same reaction from every single Northern Divine Region profound practitioner. It didn't matter whether they were as high as a realm king or as low as a simple foot soldier. Everyone immediately fell to the ground in worship of him. There has never been a realm king or god emperor that has received such worship and reverence before in the history of the god realm, Shui Meiyin said in a heartfelt manner. "Big brother Xianxi, I'm beginning to believe that these people are no longer fighting for the Northern Divine Region alone. Perhaps they would be equally willing and eager to sacrifice their lives just for your sake alone." Shui Meiyin's casual-sounding words had merely been something that came from her heart, but they touched upon a subject that Xianxi had never been willing to dwell on. "I'm just the opportunity and leader that the Northern Divine Region has long been waiting for. Even if I didn't exist, there might be another even more suitable person who would be born in another era. The wish of the Northern Divine Region has always been to change the perception of darkness in the God realm, and to change the destiny of their ailing Divine Region. It's not something a simple title like the Devil Master can ever be compared to." Shui Meiyin opened her mouth to say something, but when she saw Xianxi deliberately staring ahead and not looking down at the people below them, she swallowed the words that she had been about to say. Instead, a bright smile appeared on her face as she crowed excitedly. "We're gonna leave the 10 Directions deep sea realm soon. Wow, look at that. There's a purple-red star realm that seems to be streaked with veins of lightning. Let's go take a look at that place." "Okay." Xianxi naturally wouldn't reject her, so the two of them altered their trajectory to travel toward the world glowing with purple light. This was how Xianxi set aside all of his worries, and took in the sights and sounds of the Southern Divine Region along with Shui Meiyin, as they made their merry way toward the 7-star realm. A star realm that was located near the southern border of the Southern Divine Region. It got this name from the 7 stars that surrounded it. The vast God realm had 40,000 star realms, but 30,000 of those star realms were lower star realms. As one of these lower star realms, the star region the 7-star realm was located in was very small. In fact, Its profound energy aura was weaker than most of the other lower star realms. It was very clear that it wasn't a star realm that was focused on the profound way. Such star realms were very rare in the God realm, and most of them had their own unique qualities. "We're here. This is the 7-star realm. Let's go down and take a look." The capital of most star realms was where the sect of their realm king was located, but the 7-star realm was different. Its capital was called the 7-star trading region. When they arrived in the skies above the 7-star trading region, they instantly felt the hustle and bustle of the city below them. Shui Meiyin tightly grasped Xianxia's hand. She could hardly wait to visit the city. The 7-star trading region was several thousand kilometers long, and there were countless shops of different sizes located within. There were small stalls laid out at every corner of the city, and they sold all sorts of things. Weapons, profound artifacts, strange stones, mysterious plants and flowers, ancient jade, formation plates, decorations, food, clothes, profound arcs, profound beasts, news, and many other items. There were some items that were so strange that they even stunned someone like Xianxia. "Wah! Wah!" Shui Meiyin cried out happily. Her starry eyes eagerly drank in her surroundings, but there was simply too much to take in. "It's so lively, and there are so many strange things. This is exactly how 99th Brother described it. Wah!" It was the ambience of a busy marketplace. It hadn't been too long since Xianxia had last experienced this, but it made him feel as if he had been transported to another time in his life. It was almost as if he had fallen into an illusion of sorts. The Snow Song realm, the various king realms and god emperors, his ascension to Devil Master. Ever since he had entered the god realm, he had moved too fast and climbed too high. As such, the paths he had walked and the positions he had ascended made him feel as if what he was seeing now was from another life. As someone who had both been born in a place like the glazed light realm and been extremely sheltered from birth, this was the first time Shui Meiyin had ever been to such a world. There is a similar star realm in the eastern divine region. Even though it's a bit smaller than this one, it's also as rowdy and boisterous as this one, Xianxia said. When they landed, Shui Meiyin and Xianxia used their profound energy to change their appearances. After that, they withdrew all of their profound energy and aura into their bodies. They did this because the entire God realm knew the Devil Master's face, and the 7-star realm would instantly be thrown into huge disarray if he simply strolled in without any warning. After she heard those words, Shui Meiyin immediately turned toward Xianxia and asked, "Really? It's a star realm called the Darkia realm," Xianxia replied. "That should be the lower star realm with the most merchant guilds in the eastern divine region. However, the one thing that's different from this place is that the Darkia realm also pursues the profound way very seriously." Back when he had visited the Darkia realm, a rather strong sect known as the Black Soul Divine Sect reigned in that place. However, Xianxia's spiritual sense had not picked up any sect that was on the same level of the Black Soul Divine Sect in the 7-star realm. All the sects that were scattered around the place were only of middling power. "The Darkia realm, I think my grandfather mentioned that star realm to me before." An inquisitive expression suddenly appeared on Shui Meiyin's face. "Big brother Xianxia, I remember that you joined the Snow Song Realm's Divine Ice Phoenix sect the moment you entered the God realm, so why do you know about the Darkia realm? It also sounds like you've actually been there before." As a wave of memories assaulted him, Xianxia closed his eyes and said, "I committed a huge mistake soon after I arrived in the God realm by offending Master. I was so terrified that I chose the coward's path by running away, and the star realm that I fled to happened to be the Darkia realm. It was also there that he met He Lin, and it was only through this chance meeting that Xianxia had allowed him to stay in the forbidden realm of Samsara. It was also the reason for his connection with He Ling. This just went to show that what a person thought as failures and disappointing acts could sometimes end up greatly influencing their destiny in a positive fashion." Curiosity gleamed in Shui Meiyin's eyes. "Big brother Xianxia actually ran away before. Did you really do something that offensive to your master?" Xianxia shook his head and quickly changed the subject. "Where is the place that your 99th brother mentioned? It must be something special if he kept recommending it to you." "It's just around the corner. In fact, we should be reaching there very soon." Shui Meiyin chose not to probe Xianxia any further. She shouted in an excited voice, "That place is called the Pavilion of Delightful Dreams. 99th brother said that if I ever came to the southern divine region to play, I definitely needed to go there and try their rippling heart jade soup." Xianxia chuckled as he gently squeezed her hand. We crossed over such a vast star region just for a bowl of soup. Hey, this is no ordinary soup, you know, Shui Meiyin retorted as her long eyelashes fluttered like butterfly wings. 99th Brother said that it is one of the greatest delicacies you can ever find in this entire universe. He said that it's so delicious that it will make you feel as if your soul is leaving your body, that just a taste would make you forget all your worries and cares. Even though that description sounds kind of crazy, 99th Brother has never lied to me before. However, this heart-rippling jade soup needs to be consumed almost immediately after it's made. Its delicious flavor will take a huge hit if you let it sit for even 15 minutes. So the only way to get a true taste of it is to come here and eat it yourself. Once a profound practitioner reached the divine way, they no longer needed to consume food or water to survive. Things like food and wine were consumed purely for enjoyment. Traveling over vast star regions just to taste a delicacy might very well be a normal thing for divine profound practitioners. As she followed the memory fragment that Shui Yinghan gave her, Shui Meiyin scanned her surroundings. It should be somewhere around here. Let me ask around. Grandfather, do you know where the Pavilion of Delightful Dreams is? The grandfather in question was a white-haired old man with a face full of wrinkles. His cultivation had just entered the Emperor Profound realm, and he was definitely no older than 500 years of age. There were a bunch of strange rocks laid out in front of him, and it looked like he was a regular vendor over here. Even though Shui Meiyin had concealed her appearance and never used her stainless divine soul in her interaction with others, she always seemed to be able to charm other people without so much as batting her eyes. In fact, most people were completely unguarded in front of her. This grandfather was no exception. Upon hearing Shui Meiyin's question, his cold and aloof expression instantly turned gentle, and he replied with a hearty chuckle, "Little lady, you have the worst timing. The Pavilion of Delightful Dreams just closed shop 7 days ago, and the previous owners no longer reside in the 7-star realm." "It closed?" Shui Meiyin asked in a stunned voice. After that, she said, "Why did it close? It was so popular, business couldn't have become that bad, right?" "This had nothing to do with its popularity," the old man replied as his bright expression turned grim. He gave a long sigh and said, "The devils of the northern divine region have invaded our southern divine region, and the southern sea god realm was destroyed just like that. And when I think of the other 3 king realms, I feel even sigh. Even though everything seems peaceful now, you never know when those devils will flip our divine region upside down. When that time comes, we'll be nothing more than lambs to the slaughter." Xianxia, this isn't only happening in the 7-star realm. Every well-to-do family in this star region has fled as far away as they can. Of course, most of them fled to the western divine region because the dragon god realm is there, but it isn't a place that most ordinary people can go to. So there are even more of us normal folk who chose to hide in the lower realm, even though the aura there is turbid and muddy. The old man shook his head and continued, "As for people like me, we can only wait here and see what the heavens have in store for us. If the dragon god realm manages to destroy those devils, all will be well. But if they can't, I daren't even think about that." Shui Meiyin's expression also grew sad and somber as she asked, "Then, does grandfather know where the owners of the Pavilion of Delightful Dreams fled to?" "I don't know. But if you really want to find out, you should try asking Master Qi, who sells beef right next to where they used to be." Thank you, grandfather." When she arrived back at Xianxia's side, Shui Meiyin's delicate head drooped a little, and a smile could no longer be found on her face. "It looks like we came here in vain, huh?" Xianxia said as he glanced at her face from the side. She pouted for just a single instant, but when she turned to look at him, she wore a bright and dazzling smile on her face. "No way. As long as I'm together with Big Brother Xianxia, I'm the happiest girl alive, no matter where we go or what we do." Xianxia gave her a deep and meaningful look. "Now that we can't go to this Pavilion of Delightful Dreams, where should we head to next? Shall we return to the 10 Directions Deep Sea Realm?" "I don't want to," Shui Meiyin said as she tightly grasped his hand. She didn't care if people from the crowd gawked at them as she pressed her slender body into his side. "Right now, Big Brother Xianxia is mine and mine alone. There's no way that I'm gonna go back this early. Furthermore, even if the Pavilion of Delightful Dreams isn't here anymore, this place is bustling with so much activity that I'm sure that we'll be able to find a lot of delicious things to eat and fun things to do. Let's go over there and take a look." Shui Meiyin simply tossed all thoughts of the Pavilion of Delightful Dreams to the side as she dragged him even deeper into this merchant city. They strolled through the seven-star trading region for a full 2 hours, and Shui Meiyin had bought a whole bunch of strange and wondrous things. The days were very short in this realm, so it had turned to evening before they even realized it. Shui Meiyin was currently pulling Yunqi through the outskirts of the seven-star trading region with seemingly boundless energy. As she strolled through the streets, she happily munched on a rainbow candy stick that could be found in any small city in the lower realms. As they laughed and talked, they walked into a copse of trees far away from the cities. The sound of birds chirping occasionally rang out in the silence, and very few people could be seen around them. It was at this moment that 4 people darted out. One of them let out a chilling laugh as he said, "Heh, stop right there." 2 of them were in the late stage of the divine origin realm, while the other 2 were in the middle stage of the divine soul realm. As 4 auras started to press down on the 2 seemingly helpless victims and suppressed their auras, the eyes of the men started to roam up and down over Yunqi and Shui Meiyin's bodies. "Oh, you poor things, did you come from the 7-star trading region?" The leader of the robbers grinned wickedly, his teeth flashing with a cold light. "If you want to live, then obediently leave all of the profound crystals you have." Yunqi could scarcely bear to listen to a second more of this drivel. He didn't even bother twitching a finger as black light flashed through his eyes. The 4 unfortunate robbers instantly turned into black powder that scattered into the wind. To think that they would actually try to rob the Devil Master himself. Would these hapless robbers be considered too lucky or too unlucky? Because the chance of this happening to them in the first place was 1,000,000,000 to 1. Shui Meiyin stopped nibbling on her candy as she said in a sad voice, "As a star realm that mainly focuses on trading, the 7-star realm is visited by countless people from other star realms every day. As a result, it is protected by the laws of many star realms that are more powerful than it. For example, big profound arcs are not allowed to be parked in the skies above the trading region, and you're not allowed to release too strong of an aura while you're in the city. It is also a very serious crime to use your strength to bully others into submission or rob them of their things in this star realm. If anyone gets caught committing these crimes, they will be very heavily punished. But robbers like these are actually starting to appear in a place like this, and they were radiating a very heavy stench of blood. This meant they were cold-blooded killers as well." Yunqi didn't say anything. He quietly listened to Shui Meiyin. "Those who possess lower power levels don't have the qualifications to join a war between the higher powers. They don't even have the ability to cause the smallest of ripples in such a battlefield. Therefore, it seems like these battles wouldn't affect them either. However, the truth is that they're probably the ones who are the most affected. To think that even a huge trade hub like this has become this lawless and chaotic. It's hard to imagine what it's like on the other star realms of this level." As she stared into the distance, Shui Meiyin gave a very soft and sad sigh. When a storm uproots a giant tree, perhaps the ones who suffer the most are the innocent plants and insects around it. Yunqi stopped and stared at the young girl's profile before saying, "Is this what you're trying to tell me today?" "Huh." Shui Meiyin looked as if she had just been startled awake, and she immediately turned to look at Yunqi. She blinked a few times and said, "I'm not. I was just a little overcome by sudden emotion." Yunqi hunched over slightly as he firmly grasped Shui Meiyin by the shoulders and turned her toward him. He stared straight into those starry eyes as a small helpless smile appeared on his face. "You're still not telling me the truth. So you made me travel such a long distance during such a critical period of time just for a bowl of heart-rippling jade soup. Do you really think that I'm a little piglet who's just 3 months old?" "Heh." When she heard the dreadful and malevolent Devil Master utter those childish words in such a sarcastic way, Shui Meiyin couldn't help but let out a laugh. "You're normally very clever, but you used such a cheap, simple, and rigid method to bring me to this place, heh. It looks like you very anxiously want to tell me or show me something, correct?" Shui Meiyin opened her mouth to say something, but she immediately bit down on her lower lip to stop the words from coming out. She muttered in a very soft voice, "I didn't use some cheap trick. I just know that big brother Yunqi wouldn't be able to reject me, no matter how willful my request was, so I just said it." The starlight in her eyes started to waver, and it looked like she was struggling over something right now. "Let me guess," Yunqi said with a soft chuckle. "You hope that I'll do my very best to not hurt the innocent during this vicious war with the Dragon God realm. You also hope that I'll restore order to the universe once I replace Long Bai as its ruler and treat the world with kindness and compassion, right?" Shui Meiyin's eyes continued to tremble. She didn't nod or shake her head. She simply stared at Xianxia for a very long time before she finally opened her mouth to speak. When Kai and Yinger sent me that sound transmission, I heard a very deep worry in her voice. Big brother Xianxia is so anxious to destroy the dragon god realm that I feel very afraid that your haste will be accompanied by a huge danger to yourself. Just like how you didn't hesitate to gamble on whether your powers would work on a super dangerous weapon like the Titanic Sea God Cannon when you set your mind to destroying the Southern Sea God realm. So, Xianxia stared at her with a slightly puzzled expression. It looked like he had been completely wrong about what Shui Meiyin wanted to say to him. After I received that news, my very first reaction was that I needed to tell you about that thing. But I've always been hesitant and worried about it. Even up till now, I still don't know if I should tell you or not. I really don't know if now is the right time to tell you. Xianxia's eyebrows started to knit together. Something that would make someone like Shui Meiyin so hesitant and flustered couldn't be any ordinary thing. He couldn't bear to continue watching this young girl's painful struggle, so he gently patted her on the shoulder and said, "It's all right. It doesn't matter what this is about. It doesn't even matter if it's good or bad news. If you want to tell me about it, just say it. If you don't want to, it's fine, Al." Xianxia's voice suddenly broke off as his head jerked towards the southwest. His eyes instantly grew dark and cold. It was at this moment that Shui Meiyin sensed something as well. As she stared in the same direction as Xianxia, the very first thing that flitted through her eyes was a look of flustered panic. "HMPH, what a strange and wonderful fate this is," Xianxia barked out in an ugly voice. After that, he lifted Shui Meiyin's jade hand and said, "Meiyin, listen to your own heart. No one will force you to say anything, not even me. No one will blame you either. But before you decide, let's go catch some fish which have slipped the net." After he finished speaking, he flew into the air with Shui Meiyin before releasing his profound energy and shooting off southwest. God Realm's destruction and the devil's invasion of the southern divine region, the normally peaceful seven-star realm had been slowly becoming more lawless and violent. Even though the skies were merely shrouded in darkness, and a true calamity had yet to strike, panic had caused the ugly side of human nature to rear its head once more. People who had fallen into madness and evil were slowly dismantling law and order in the realm. As a result, panic and crime began to spread through the world like a pandemic, causing society to degrade even more quickly. It would eventually collapse if this continued. During this grim period, 7 criminals had been using their strength to slaughter all the weak, profound practitioners in this area. They had hunted them down like 7 flesh-starved wolves. Perhaps they were trying to accumulate enough resources to flee to the distant western divine region. Or perhaps they were simply taking advantage of the chaos to give vent to all the unspeakable desires that had festered in their dark hearts. After all, even king realms had bent the knee to these devils, so why did they have to continue maintaining this facade of justice and righteousness? However, this band of villains had chosen the wrong target today. During an evening that seemed much more desolate and quiet than most evenings, a woman slowly walked out of the gloom. She was dressed in a simple light cyan robe, and its sleeves were made of a silky, translucent material which seemed to teasingly reveal tantalizing glimpses of her fair and translucent arms. The aqua-colored cloth belt around her waist rustled seductively as she moved gracefully forward. Her face was so beautiful that even the bright moon and stars paled in comparison to it. Her skin was as white as snow, her features seemed to be carved from the finest jade, and her beautiful eyes were as clear as pools of pure water. Her simple clothes, unthreatening and unassuming appearance, and the traces of both sorrow and fragility in her beautiful eyes made her seem like a perfect target. However, there was an ineffable nobility faintly radiating from her in spite of all of these things, a nobility that a tiny star realm like this couldn't possibly produce. She was currently carrying a little girl that looked to be about 8 or 9 years old in her slender arms. The little girl looked similar to her, and her powdery jade-like face was extremely adorable. She tightly clung to the older girl, and it was almost as if she was snuggled up in her own world. The 7 wicked wolves who had been quietly waiting for their prey fell into a long period of dazed silence as this unearthly celestial maiden, a beauty the likes of which had only ever appeared in their dreams, suddenly descended to earth in front of them. By the time they had come to their senses and rushed out to surround her, all thoughts of profound crystals had been banished from their minds. Only their wild and wicked desires remained, and they looked as if they couldn't wait to ravish and soil the ephemeral beauty in front of them. The young girl was neither flustered nor panicked. She merely flicked her jade-like fingers gently in the air. The 7 villains cried out softly as all of them slumped to the ground, but none of them had died. The beautiful maiden was not willing to take any lives in front of her little sister. Even though she only used the briefest hint of her strength in that exceedingly short instant, what had surged out of her fingers was the power of a divine master. "Big sister, why have there been so many bad guys appearing lately?" asked the little girl. There wasn't a single trace of fear in her eyes, and it was obvious that this wasn't the first time she had been in such a situation. The cyan-robed girl shook her head and replied in a gentle voice, "There have always been many bad people in this universe. However, there's no need for Wire to worry. There's no one who can harm us here." "Yeah." The little girl nodded her head vigorously as she turned to show her sister the brightest smile. "No matter how many bad guys there are, they won't be able to beat Big Sister. I'm not afraid." "That's right. Yesterday I saw Grandfather preparing the profound arc, and I even heard Father say that we were going to take a vacation in the lower realms for a while. Is that true?" "Oh, it looks like you already found out," the cyan-robed girl said in a gentle voice. "Wire, don't worry, no matter where we go, I'll always—" Everything suddenly went dark. The expression on the cyan-robed girl's face dramatically changed as a huge amount of terror surged into her widening eyes. She gave the Wire, whom she had been holding on to, a forceful shove as she shouted in fear, "Wire, hurry up and run! Hurry up and run!" The little girl was pushed very far away, and she tumbled along the ground until she finally came to a stop. She had turned to stare at her ashen-faced sister in dazed puzzlement when a man radiating a cold and dark aura suddenly appeared in front of them. A black-robed girl had also appeared right beside him. As the light continued to fade, the entire world seemed to shrink away and curl up in fear of this man's stiflingly dreadful aura. "Young Master, Yun," the girl in cyan robes gasped out his name as if she was stuck in a dream, perhaps it was half a nightmare as well. "Jin Yue," Yun-Chi said the cyan-robed girl's name in a cold and dry voice. The most dangerous smile in the entire universe slowly appeared on his face. "To think that I would meet you in such a place, and in good health as well. This truly is a rather pleasant surprise." Those chilling words brought her back to cold, cruel reality. The man in front of her had long since ceased to be the young Master Yun of the past, whose gentle eyes caused her heart to secretly race. He was now the Devil Master of the North, the man who had destroyed the entire Moon God realm and scattered her family to the winds. The man who had killed the Moon God Emperor and plunged the entire God realm into terror and darkness. Both her eyes and her body trembled uncontrollably as she rushed in front of the dazed girl who was staring blankly at them. She wrapped her ice-cold arms tightly around the little girl as she begged Yun-Chi in a heartrending voice. "Devil Master, she's only a child. Please, please let her leave. You won't even have to trouble yourself with me, because I'll kill myself once she leaves." The edge of Yun-Chi's lips curled up into a cruel and sinister smile. He raised his right hand, and a cluster of black mist swirled into life in the palm of his hand. After that, he said one soul-piercingly cold word. "Die!" Jin Yue, Lion Yue, and Yao Yue had been the 3 personal maidservants of the Moon God Emperor Xia Qingyu. Among the 3 of them, Jin Yue was the one who had been closest to her. He had personally witnessed the destruction of the entire Moon God realm. The power that had ripped it apart was something that only a Moon God might be able to flee from, so how had Jin Yue, a mid-stage divine master, managed to survive that? Unless she had not been in the Moon God realm at the time. Whatever it was, the reason is no longer important. Now that I've met her, I just need to kill her. His hatred toward Xia Qingyu and the Moon God realm knew no bounds, so how could he spare Jin Yue, the person who had received most of Xia Qingyu's love? Even if this girl had left the best of impressions on him before his fateful transformation. "No, don't!" Jin Yue hugged her sister even tighter in fear as she sank to her knees and knelt before Yun-Chi. A hazy mist filled her eyes as she said, "The Devil Master can do whatever her wishes to Jin Yue, but I beg that you let off my little sister. She's only an innocent child who doesn't know anything. I beg the Devil Master." "Innocent?" Jin Yue's sorrowful pleading didn't lessen Yun-Chi's malice by a single iota. On the contrary, it actually caused his face to warp in hatred and anger. When he spoke again, his voice had turned even darker and colder. "How dare you use that word in front of me? Your family is innocent, but my family deserved to die." Jin Yue was left completely speechless by those words. At this time, the little girl in her arms suddenly showed an alarming amount of strength as she struggled free from Jin Yue's embrace and leapt in front of her. After that, she spread her arms wide and blocked Yun Chi's way as she yelled, "Bad guy, don't hurt my sister, don't hurt my sister." The little girl's body was shaking violently in fear, but her tear-filled eyes were filled with a stubborn determination. Emotion throbbed in Yun Chi's heart for a fraction of a second, but it only lasted for that tiny instant. Bang! A deft blow landed on the back of the girl's neck, causing her vision to go completely black. After that, she collapsed silently back into Jin Yue's arms. As she quietly and carefully infused all of her power into the little girl's body, Jin Yue made one final plea. "Devil Master, as long as you're willing to spare wire, Jin Yue is willing to be your slave for all of my lifetimes." Yun Chi was no longer willing to listen to these words. Instead, he stretched his hand wide as darkness began to howl around him. Jin Yue was a mid-level divine master after all, so Yun Chi would have to expend a bit of energy to kill her. "Big brother Yun Chi." The hand which had started to glow with black profound light was suddenly seized by Shui Meiyin. Yun Chi glanced to the side and looked into Shui Meiyin's shimmery eyes. "Can you spare them? Please?" she asked in a soft and gentle voice. Yun Chi hesitated for a brief moment before saying, "You know that you have to pull trouble up by the roots to prevent it from coming back to haunt you in the future. What's more, she's no ordinary survivor of the moon god realm." Jin Yue was stunned by this turn of events. She could scarcely believe what she was witnessing right now. There was no reason for Shui Meiyin to intervene on her behalf. Her father Shui Qianheng had been personally crippled by the moon god emperor, and she herself had been imprisoned at the bottom of the moon god realm's moon prison for many years. She should also be someone who deeply hated the moon god emperor and the moon god realm. "I know." The light in Shui Meiyin's liquid eyes wavered for an instant, and they rippled like water that was being stirred up by strong winds. "But in truth, Big Sister Jin Yue is no longer a member of the moon god realm. The reason she is completely safe and sound in spite of the moon god realm's destruction is because she was banished from the moon god realm by the moon god emperor. She was not only banished from Xia Qingyu's side, even her entire clan was expelled from the moon god realm." Jin Yue turned to stare at Shui Meiyin, a dumbfounded expression on her face. Why did she know about this? Such a thing actually happened. Yun Chi's eyebrows twitched as he shot a sidelong glance toward Jin Yue. He smirked and said, "Didn't the moon god emperor value you the most out of all of her subjects? She would actually banish your entire clan from the moon god realm? Tell me, what sort of delightful thing did you do to her to make her respond in such a way?" Yun Chi's words instantly stirred up those most painful memories in her heart. The moon god emperor's cold and apathetic eyes, her cold and cutting words, and that slap which pierced her to her very soul. Being Xia Qingyu's personal maidservant had been the pride and glory of her life. During those years, her respect and reverence for Xia Qingyu even exceeded all the other convictions in her heart. She was willing to serve under her for her entire life, and she wouldn't even hesitate to sacrifice her life at any given moment for her. But, as she shook her head in pain, Jin Yue whispered, "It was a misunderstanding. I didn't do anything that would let Master down. I never have." Even now that it had come to this, her heart simply wouldn't allow her to do anything that would hurt the moon god emperor. "A misunderstanding? That really sounds like such a pity," Yun Chi said with a cold laugh. The dark light in his hands started to gather again. "Since that's the case, then you should go down to hell to find her and clear your name." "Ah, don't." Shui Meiyin grabbed his hand once again and shook her head very forcefully. A hint of pleading had crept into her starry eyes. To the current Yun Chi, Shui Meiyin's heartfelt plea was undoubtedly the one thing in the world that he couldn't reject. Yun Chi replied in a rather puzzled voice, "Meiyin, your father was crippled by Xia Qingyu, and you were imprisoned in the moon god realm's moon prison for so many years. Why are you trying so hard to protect her?" Shui Meiyin definitely wasn't someone who was naive and unversed in the ways of the world. She also wasn't some kind of saint who overflowed with mercy. On the contrary, she was far too cunning and clever, which was why her current actions had absolutely stunned Yun Chi. Shui Meiyin gently bit down on her bottom lip before she looked at him with those watery eyes and said, "During the time I was imprisoned in the moon god realm, Big Sister Jin Yue was always very good to me. So I really like her." Yun Chi shot her an incredulous look, just because of that. However, what Yun Chi was unaware of was that the shock in Jin Yue's heart far exceeded his own right now. When Shui Meiyin came to the moon god realm, she had been imprisoned in the lowest layer of the moon prison, and on the very first day she had arrived, Xia Qingyu had given the stern command that no one was to approach Shui Meiyin without her express permission. As the person closest to Xianxia, Jin Yue had only gone to the bottom of the moon prison twice during those years, and both times had been on Xianxia's command. Furthermore, she had always been slavishly obedient to Xianxia's commands, so she wouldn't do anything other than what was explicitly ordered of her. As such, she had not even spoken to Shui Meiyin once during either of those visits. Therefore, the words "been very good to her" had no basis in reality whatsoever. She could only quietly and fervently thank Shui Meiyin's kind compassion in her heart. Furthermore, have you forgotten one thing, big brother Yunqi? My divine stainless soul can look into a person's soul to a certain extent and determine whether they are good or wicked. I can guarantee that all of her thoughts are directed towards her family right now. She definitely won't become a problem that big brother Yunqi will need to worry about in the future. Shui Meiyin's starry eyes curved slightly as she laughed. A person who can throw away her life to protect her sisters at a moment's notice will value peace and tranquility above all else. How could she possibly become some kind of future plague? Moreover, she tightly grasped Yunqi's hand before she looked at Jin Yue and said, "Big sister Jin Yue is a very kind and wonderful person. I believe that big brother Yunqi knows this better than most, right?" Even though the black profound light in his hand had not dissipated, the killing intent in his eyes had. He was no longer the soft-hearted and compassionate person he had once been. In fact, he bore incredible hatred and resentment toward his previous kindness and compassion. This was purely the result of Shui Meiyin's earnest pleading. Fine, his killing intent had completely dissipated, but he continued to stretch out the hand that was glowing with black profound light. "I won't kill you today. I'll only cripple your profound strength. You should be grateful for that. Stop, stop, stop." Shui Meiyin grabbed his arm once more. She shook that arm vigorously as she said in a coquettish voice, "Since you've decided to spare her, then you should do it all the way. Big sister Jin Yue is so pretty. If you cripple her profound strength, she's gonna be bullied everywhere she goes." To become the personal attendant of the Moon God Emperor, a person needed to not only have exceedingly high strength and talent, they also needed to be good-looking enough to topple a city. As such, Jin Yue was definitely beautiful enough to drive most realm kings crazy. If she was stripped of the power that allowed her to reign over most of creation, her unearthly beauty would definitely become a nightmare for her in the future. Sigh, Yunqi gave a deliberately heavy and helpless sigh. The dark light in his eyes had completely vanished, and he suddenly raised a hand to gently pinch Shui Meiyin's tender and adorable face. "Why are you being so willful today? Are you doing this on purpose? Then, can big brother Yunqi allow me to be willful just one more time?" Shui Meiyin said as she raised his other hand to her face. Her fairy-like voice trembled as her eyes misted over. "What else can I do?" Yunqi said with a helpless laugh. "If I wreck my precious Meiyin's mood just because of some wretches who were expelled from the Moon God realm, wouldn't I be simply shooting myself in the foot?" Hee hee. Shui Meiyin's eyes narrowed in delight as a musical laugh escaped from her throat. Her smile was cloyingly sweet and satisfied, and there were even tears shimmering in her eyes. He had been so cold and malicious to Jin Yue, but he was always so kind and tender to her. Just this moment alone made her wish that she could melt into him forever and ever. The shock and fear in Jin Yue's eyes had yet to dissipate, but the tension had already started to bleed out of her delicate body. She could scarcely bring herself to believe that she would actually be able to leave safe and sound with wire. But Yunqi's voice suddenly turned cold and dark as he turned to look at Jin Yue. No matter what her current status is, no matter what circumstances she had, no matter what she's thinking today, she used to be someone who stood by Xianxia's side. So there is no way I'm just going to let her off like this. She still has to pay. As he finished speaking, Yunqi's hand suddenly arched into a claw as he thrust it forward. A gale wind shot toward Jin Yue. "Ah!" Jin Yue gave a frightened cry, but she did not dare to resist. She only managed to push away her little sister in time before her body was caught up in the wind and dragged toward Yunqi. Yunqi's fingers curled up slightly as he cruelly grasped Jin Yue's snowy neck. Once he had a firm grasp of her smooth flesh, power surged from his hand. Rip! Jin Yue's outer and inner garments instantly disintegrated into dust. Her flawless and satiny skin, which was as white as snow, was bared for all the world to see.